Hi, I'm Ella McChrystal and this is The New Mind. Today's guests are Carl Scott and Karla Loft, formerly known as Two's a Duo. As you know, this is a storytelling podcast. I'm just going to say a few key phrases and words here, and that gives you a little bit of an insight into the subject matters that we will be covering today. Before I say those words, I want to say stay with it today. This is going to be mind-blowing. The work that they do is astonishing, number one, but their stories are equally as amazing, actually. So I'm going to say those key phrases now. We're going to go for knife crime, domestic violence, gang life. We're going to go for crime. We're going to go for childhood adversity, mental health, and that's just to name a few. So I'm going to introduce them now.
Hello.
We've been laughing so much already. So I'm exhausted.
Sorry.
And he's exhausted as well because he's had no sleep.
I'm in the room though, I'm ready.
He's in the room. Whether he stays in the room remains to be seen. He's had 3 hours sleep because he's been doing picking up children and doing things and getting stuck in traffic and all sorts, haven't you?
Don't drive to London at 10 o'clock at night. It's a crazy thing to do, isn't it?
And get stuck at a traffic light for 38 minutes.
Things you do for your kids.
I know. So he's exhausted, bless him.
It's a hard life, ain't it?
It is a hard knock life.
I was asleep, so I wouldn't know.
She's had her beauty sleep, so she's fine. As you can tell, because you look beautiful.
I did offer to go, didn't I?
She wakes up like that.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Well, she doesn't because she does it in the car. She's shown us all.
Damn you, Instagram.
I did see that and laughed, especially when you said he's ironed his little t-shirt.
It's all hung up in the back there.
Yeah, no one's allowed in the back. No one's allowed to touch it. It gets hung up, and
it's safe.
Didn't iron mine though, did you?
Well, there's not much to iron, to be fair.
I always say I'll just get in it and stretch it, and then it'll be all right. Get the creases out.
No iron required.
No.
Now, obviously, we're not here to talk about ironing, but it's nice to mention it just so everyone knows you do a little bit of housekeeping as well as everything else.
Yeah.
So, I know you because of Instagram, and I've seen a lot of the work that you do, and we had a conversation about why you would be on this podcast, and there's some stories that I think are quite painful stories, but it does inform people as to why you're so good at what you do and what the journey is that's ahead of you as well. So I'm going to go to you first, Carl. I know that you've kind of been getting involved for many, many years in knife crime and educating on that and all of that stuff. So if we start there and then you can start to weave the stories in and just go with the flow, because I know there's going to be moments where you're probably going to need to talk over each other and all that sort of stuff to get the points across.
Yeah, she talks over me.
Oh, stop it.
So we'll just go with that first, that intro into sort of the professional element of what you've been doing, and then we can go backwards from there if you like.
Yeah, sure.
So you've got your project Youth Together, haven't you?
Yes.
But you've been working in this space for a long time. So just explain briefly what you do.
So basically, this all come about 2018. I was working in a drug and alcohol service as a support worker, and there was a police lady called Nikki that was looking for ex-gang members to go around schools doing talks via the Safer Communities team and help with workshops around subjects like county lines, gangs, exploitation, etc., which obviously involved the knife crime side of it. And I'd never really covered so much around my personal experience with knife crime. It was never really discussed, to be fair. And I wasn't really involved in that line of work with young people at that time to be talking about it.
Yeah.
So there was not really a point of the subject. So following that, I was doing one-to-ones with kids in the police station, following a hard day's graft within drug and alcohol. So I wasn't getting home sometimes till 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, it was lovely.
This is supposed to be serious.
Oh. And truthful.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so that's how that started. So the workshops was going really well within the school. I was making a bit of a name for myself whilst I was doing that and making an impact on certain said police officers that was there at the time as well. And an opportunity came up for a early intervention youth coach with a new project that was set up via the Sussex Police Crime Commissioner's Office through some funding through the serious violence strategy with the Home Office. So the credentials come out for that role.
Yeah.
And obviously I looked at that and I was like, wow, like that is not me. I had no experience with that. So I basically instantly put a negative on it straight away. I can't do this. This, like, the wages was big.
Yeah.
Probably that would have been like my third ever job in my life.
Wow.
But you talked me into it.
Yeah.
And I went for it. My manager at the time, Alison, brilliant. She's always helped me with applications and stuff because I was never really that hands-on when it came to filling out things properly.
Yeah.
How did you used to type on the computer, babe?
Someone else was saying this to me last night. That's the most I've ever done.
It'd take me an hour to write the. Like, it was a nightmare. Yeah.
Where's the H?
So, like, Ali, bless her, she's taught me quite a lot. So, you know, she's been really good to me. So I managed to get an interview through the application. Thank you, Ali. And yeah, and then, you know, and obviously Karla backed me up as well because we had to do like what would you call it? I wouldn't say like role play, but I had to talk about a situation.
Yeah.
So I had to explain that situation in my interview. And me and Karla were sat in a cafe in the morning before the interview eating a bacon sandwich, and she's trying to get me to go through
it was
this.
like teaching him lines.
Yeah,
I was like, right, what's the next bit? And then he'd just look at me and he was like, oh,
complete
bless.
mind block gone.
Yeah.
And I was panicking, and by now I've got like an interview in 20 minutes time, and I know I've got to do this in front of 5 people.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this? But, you know, I went in the interview and it just come from nowhere. And I was just like,
It's amazing, isn't
yeah,
it?
it was all coming out.
Yeah.
So they didn't give me the job the first time round. They was a little bit unsure because obviously my history and, you know, my criminal record history, etc., which is understandable. But also my employment history as well. I didn't have any.
Yeah.
So they wanted a second interview. So I went to the second interview with their manager and probably answered all 5 questions with one reply, with one question that was asked of me. And I got the job within 10 minutes. So
amazing.
So that's how it started. So, and I did that for like 2.5 years, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I worked throughout the whole of COVID, you know, supporting kids through like the worst times that we've had.
Of course, yeah.
And, you know, I got on the TV for it, and, you know, I was quite recognised, nominated for youth awards and stuff. And
incredible.
yeah, and that's and I loved that job. Like, I'd found the niche, didn't I?
Yeah,
that was me.
The one, wasn't it?
That was for me. And drug and alcohol and youth work. That's my.
So how were you in the drug and alcohol sector?
So I've had issues with drugs all my life.
Yeah.
So I would say all my life. Yeah. I mean, the first time I'd ever tried drugs, I was 9. That was cannabis. Alcohol was about 9. Didn't have an issue. I wasn't, you know, continually using it every day at that age. It was just in set circumstances, which I'll talk about in a bit. But my drug problem started around about 16 years old when I'd moved into a hostel. So,
and what was the drug?
Heroin and crack cocaine. But it wasn't so much around the crack, so much that started to slip in throughout the times. So heroin was the main one for me at that age. So I'd struggled with that for years and years. And to be fair, I say struggled with it, I didn't even want to stop taking it because I didn't think about anything anymore.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a blocker.
Yeah,
escapism.
Big time. Yeah, everything had gone completely. The only time it had ever come back is I was going through cold turkey. So
yeah,
then I'd have to take more.
Yeah.
So so that's where it's kind of got me involved with the drug and alcohol, and, you know, I knew everything about it.
Yeah.
You know, I got personal feelings as well as what other people could be feeling. And I know each person's different to the next.
Yeah.
But we're all still battling the same thing.
Of course.
So that's what got me involved in that line of work, which again, we'll talk about how I got involved in that as well.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, following on, back off the project, lost the funding for the reboot, and I went back into drug and alcohol. Then I worked in a school. Ran a behaviour unit in there.
Wow.
For 9 months, was it?
About 9 months.
Secondary school.
Yeah. Which I never thought I would do because of my criminal record. Never thought in a million years I'd get in a school. But I got it.
Already I'm just like, it's so brilliant to hear this.
Yeah.
Because there's so many kids out there that are just like pushed away straight away, or you'll be no good. And no one focuses on them because they're showing signs of difficult behaviour or whatever. And here you are, gone through, and I know we haven't even scratched the surface yet, gone through what you've gone through, and you're now doing that. I just love it.
it was something that it was really rewarding. And you know, like you can have a job and you're actually excited to get up in the morning to go to work.
Yeah, I do know that.
And I had that.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd had that, like being excited about going to work. And
who feels like that? We are lucky when we get to feel privileged
definitely
and excited.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
So, but the only downfall to that, which you know, I'm prone to find negatives in things. She'll tell you that.
Oh god, here
And
we go.
but this is she'd agree with this one.
Okay,
But the only downfall to it is that I always had to answer to somebody.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that is tough. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So, hence Project Youth.
Yeah, that's how it was born.
See, this is exactly why I went into self-employment as well, because
Yeah.
I'm not good at being told what to do. And I don't know if that's a history of abuse thing,
Yeah.
but I'm not good at it. So I thought, right, you know, let's do this.
I don't think it was so much the fact of, you know, being told what to do. It was
It
the
was the
fact, it
restrictions,
was
wasn't it?
restrictions of what I could and couldn't do.
Yes, that's the other issue, isn't it? Is the like
Yeah.
you said earlier, actually off camera, the red tape.
There's too much of it.
Yeah.
And I think the most powerful parts of working with young people is the rawness of it.
Yes,
Because when you're working with young people, they want realism. They
do.
real.
They don't want the bullshit and the corporate rubbish.
I do understand to a certain extremity of what you're supposed to say to young people,
Of course.
because you can traumatize kids.
Well, it's
with
ethical boundaries.
exactly, yeah. And I'm not stupid.
No.
I know what to say and what not to say. I just don't want people telling me how to say it, because
Yeah.
I know what to do.
Yeah.
So therefore, that's what we did, and we decided Project Youth that this is what is coming up. We've got to do this, like, and we take that risk, as we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
You've got to take the risk, and I quit my job. And admittedly, the first round, it didn't work out at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't ready yet.
That was about a year ago now,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
So it was sat there on the back burner, weren't ready. So I went back into drug and alcohol again, and I managed to become senior support worker at that point. And it just kept firing back at me. Or you know, different interviews was coming in, and I was doing knife crime at this point over a couple of years. But I'd started visually putting this hard work out about 2 years ago. But I'd been doing it for a long time before that. So it's, you know, a lot of people that could see some of the stuff that we do, they think we've only just been started to do this, and it's not. That's
But
untrue.
you've been doing it a long,
We've been doing
time.
it a long time, yeah. Even before a lot of people that I've met along the way, a very long time before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, and Project Youth now, obviously, lucky for us, we've had the PR that we've had. You know, we've been.
But that's come to you, hasn't it? Mostly.
Yeah.
It's not like you've gone out and got PR. Like, because of what you do, you've attracted the PR. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So people don't think you've paid for it. You've actually created
nothing
it.
like that. Yeah,
We've
we've
been
got
really lucky,
the
haven't we?
emails to prove it. You know, people contacting us for this stuff, and you know, and that has been a massive benefit. And even a friend of mine, Jane, who runs another youth company called We Make Good Trouble from Brighton, and she said, "Your PR you've had is crazy for a project at such an early stage."
I mean, I must admit, I am impressed.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So am I.
Yeah. No, but seriously, yeah. I mean, you know, we've done some more graph with this, haven't we?
Oh, good,
And
yeah.
it
Behind
is-
the scenes, it's been going on for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And like we said, we originally set it up over a year ago, and the website was there for a year, and it just didn't really go anywhere, and we just shut it down. And then it was when we kind of was ready to give up, weren't we? And then when his drug and alcohol job come to an end, it was actually coming to an end. And he panics whenever any of his work seizes up. He panics and says, "What the hell am I going to do now?" And I said, "Why don't we just focus? Now seems like the right time. Why don't we just focus on the project and put everything into the project? You've got nothing to lose, everything to gain." And we reset the whole website back up, didn't we?
Yeah, started it all again.
That was March.
And you're doing, for people that kind of haven't followed you yet, you're doing bleed boxes, you're doing education through that, you're doing sort of, I know we want to talk about your stories more than anything, because this is all on your social media if people want to look, but just give an insight into what Project Youth actually does.
So Project Youth is a early intervention youth project. We aim to work with young people from the ages of 10 to 18, but take priority over like 10 to 15.
Yeah.
The project also is just about to launch a new part to that project for 18 to 24s, because there's a massive gap that's missing. And I've had a couple of meetings with probation over the last couple of weeks behind the scenes. That's ready to set go. I've already had 2 referrals for a 23-year-old and a 24-year-old, even though my project's not ready yet.
Amazing.
So it's there already.
They're lining up.
They're lining up already. Wow. And that was just from one meeting I was in for 30 minutes.
That's
So yeah. So basically, we've got one-to-one mentoring scheme through that. I have a walk in my shoes talk where I go out and personally do talks to professionals, schools, companies, businesses, etc. And then we have a school workshop program where we cover 6 sessions of between, bullying, safer uses of social media, drugs, county lines, exploitation, grooming, modern day slavery, knife crime, and bleed control training. The reason for the bleed control training is obviously because we're doing the catastrophic bleed control cabinets in East Sussex. The first person to do it, first people to do it in East Sussex.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's taken us a long time. I've known people that obviously that have had this hit off the ground quickly.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of contacts.
Yes.
And it was really difficult for me to get it off the ground in East Sussex. Me and Karla was emailing people left, right and centre and getting nowhere.
We had boxes sat in our outhouse for like about 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Out there for, weren't
Wow.
No one wanted to touch it. And
no one wanted to touch it. What, because it doesn't
walls.
Happen here kind of attitude?
No, it was more the fact that if we put a box up, everyone's going to think it happens here and that we've got a knife crime pandemic within that area. So nobody wanted the box.
Exactly. So it was graft.
It was really hard
Serious hard graft. But how these boxes came about. So obviously these boxes have been produced and done throughout another lady's loss. Of course, good reasons to doing it. Well done. Yeah. She's done a great job.
Yeah.
But I'd never heard of these boxes at all. And
I hadn't until I saw what you were doing.
And I filmed with a lady called Kelly in Manchester who sadly lost her son Romero, and she spoke about these boxes.
She was putting them up in her area.
She was putting them up in her area. She was just setting it up because her son lost his life to knife crime. And it was quite a big story on ITN News at that point. Yeah. And I went up and filmed her. We did a mass walk through Manchester with megaphones and stuff, and she mentioned about the bleed control cabinets, and I took that away from Manchester by thinking, well, this is a great initiative. This needs to be done in our area, and that's how it came about. So now the bleed control cabinets are starting to hit off. It all works by donations. It's so difficult to raise the money. They're not cheap. They're £550 each, which involves the kit inside the box as well.
Yeah.
One benefit that comes out of that for people if they like to donate is the logo of their business or company goes on the front of the box.
Oh wow!
To state proudly donated or sponsored by. So it's good publicity for the business as well that they're doing something to keep the community safe.
Yes. Yes.
But it's getting that across. It's really difficult. As soon as you hear 550, shut the door.
Well, as in £550?
Yeah.
People shut the door on £550?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
A lot.
For something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
We was looking into doing like some fundraiser events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're going to do the marathon, the half marathon, the Hastings marathon, not the actual big one. Don't get it twisted. I had to make sure that
Do not get that twisted.
I am not doing that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've got 2 up at the moment. Luckily, the first one that I'd managed to get up, I had ITV Meridian, I had BBC, I had GB News, and then we
ended up on Good Morning Britain.
Well, because we decided we thought, well, what can we do to run alongside this? And what better to do is and there was a lot of questions around it. Who can use the box? Yeah. Do you have to be trained?
What do you do with it? Yeah.
So we then decided to do bleed control training with it.
Yeah, so we got involved with a bloke called Dave.
Dave, good man. He's a legend. He's got a company called AD Training, and he offered me his services for free. And because he did that, I said to him, going forward, mate, I'm going to make you money. So you stick with us, and then that's what we're doing. So
amazing.
We are now basically going to be training probation.
So what happens with the boxes then? What would you if someone sees a box? What do they do with it?
Well, basically, if they're in the same vicinity of someone having a severe injury,
Yeah.
and there's a box at that location, there's a number on the front of the box, like 999. We had struggles as well to even have this box on a system through the NHS, which they should have been on a system, because they are up north, but they're not down here.
Right.
Which I didn't find out until the box was installed, which was too late.
Yeah.
So DCI Yates, who I work in partnership with some of the work that I do, he's managed to get it onto the police's system instead.
Oh, great.
Which was 4 days of hard graft.
Yeah, so basically, when you phone 999 and then you would say you're at the box and you've got someone with the bleed, there should be a system in place so that they, like with a defibrillator, there'll be something in place so that they'll be able to see that box is in that location, this is the pin, and they give it to the person on the phone.
Got you.
It's a CAD system.
Yeah.
However, when we spoke to them about having this box registered and stuff, there was no CAD system in place. So for a few days, the box was on the wall and we didn't sleep, did we? Because if anything had have happened, nobody would have known. You would have rang 999. They just said, well, we don't know the code. There's no system. And so we went through all talks, and basically the NHS system, they've said there isn't one and they're not going to put one in place. So we was going to take the box back down again, thinking, oh my God, we can't have this box up. And luckily, through the police, we've managed to get it on their CAD system. So when you phone 999, it will be on a system, and they will be able to give you the code, and you will be able to use the box.
Wow.
Which will now consist of, so we've got one in Hastings, we've got one in Bexhill, there's soon to be going to be one in Brighton, Worthing, because I've got 2 that's coming through. Sussex Police has funded £1,100 for 2 more.
Yeah, they've actually got involved now.
They've got involved in their funding too. So, but now, following throughout the southeast, all them codes are going to be on a police system.
Wow.
So they can be used and they can stay on the wall.
They can be used, yeah.
I mean, it's a shame that they're not just everywhere anway.
Yeah,
exactly. But at the end of the day, we're doing what we're doing. And there's only so much that we can do. And I think, hopefully they don't even get used.
Yeah, well, that's what no, of course you don't want it to be used.
So, but if they are used, they're there and they could potentially save someone's life.
And they can be used for anything. They can be used for any sort of incident that leads to a bleed. So it could be, it's not just knife crime. It could be a car accident.
Yeah.
It could be a freak accident where somebody's fallen and really hurt themselves.
Yeah.
It could be an incident outside of school where you see kids that are crossing and they end up getting hit by cars.
Yeah.
Work injuries.
Of course.
Work injury. We
so
know
much scope.
Yeah, we know someone that had a forklift injury, and that was a situation where they needed one of those kits to be used. So yeah, it's endless the amount of things that you could use it for.
I mean, it's phenomenal that this is something that you're involved with, but more than anything, I'm kind of interested in why you two care so much, because most people they get upset when they hear something in the news and then they carry on with their lives, and isn't it sad, and that's it. Whereas you two are actually doing so much to change the landscape of not only knife crime but kind of any negative situation. What makes you two so different that you're actually going out there and making your life's work about all of this stuff?
Big
question.
You know what? I think that actually comes from probably some of the experiences that we've been through. Probably from a place where we've had certain, things that we've been through, and it often feels like you're so alone and there's nobody out there to help you. And it's just, that's a really hard question.
I know. Sorry about that.
The thing is, when it comes to the youth of today, they've lost their voice.
Yeah, they have, and
they don't get listened to anymore.
No.
And like we said before, once a young person's been tarnished with that bad paintbrush, they're going to take that with them forever.
No, you're right.
And there's no kind of like opening for change, and no one wants to see that change, and they just concentrate on the negative.
It's interesting because I think people assume that children have got a voice because of social media, but they're not actually using social media to talk, to be saying I need help.
No.
What we're saying is they haven't got a voice when it comes to the system.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that I wanted to just get that point across, because I think a lot of people go, oh, they've got social media, it's easier now. It's not.
In fact, I'd say it's harder.
It's harder.
Yeah, a lot harder.
So much more pressure on you.
The thing is, I've been that young person.
Yes.
And I've been that person that's been on the receiving end of a knife, and on the other side of knife.
Yeah.
And, I've been involved in that kind of life, but why was I involved in it? So I know why I was involved in it now. like, you know, when you look forward and you go forward all them years compared to being the teenager that I were, but there was so much behind the teenage years that put me into that position.
Of
So
course.
that's the position that I'm aware of when I speak with these kids. I
Yeah.
know what the position is that they're in, and I know how much peer pressure there is out there these days, that, you know, you've got to be seen in this certain way,
Yes.
or you're not accepted.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's what's leading half of this stuff to happen. So being involved and sitting with these kids or talking to big schools about my experiences with what I've done within my life, a lot of kids get something out of that, and they have, which then leads it to be able to help the kids, and they listen to you,
Yeah.
which then you can remove yourself away from the issues that they're actually facing.
Yeah.
But then at the same time you're doing that, you're also helping to try and build a positive relationship up with the adults that they've had broken down relationships with.
Yes.
So now they're getting their voice back. Do you know what I mean?
You are becoming the, I suppose and this sounds awful, but it's meant to sound really good, the sort of the puppeteer of the change.
Yeah.
You're now helping them to be able to have those conversations. You're enabling them to, I think, articulate, maybe through you actually at first, but you're also saying, let's fix the bigger problem. Let's not just have the talk. Let's actually do the work.
The thing, when knife crime in itself, you're never going to cure it.
No.
Ever.
No.
So, but prevention is what they say, better than cure.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're still working with it. You're not just leaving it to grow and grow and grow and grow. You're still doing bits around it, and you're still preventing it by each kid that you're working with. You are putting your personal experience into that young person for them to not make that decision.
Well, that's pain for power, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And
it's also about, I think, what we've said before. It's also about the bigger picture as well. It's not just about the youth itself. It's about, we know the effects that it has on everybody else. It's the communities, it's the services, it's the parents, the families, the cousins, the brothers, the friends. So actually, with the project, when you're tackling some of the problems of the youth, you're actually tackling different areas that help a lot of other people. So it's
the knock-on effect.
Exactly.
Ripple, isn't it?
Of course it is. Effect. And both of you two, like you said there, have had your own experiences that have brought you to a place where you do understand the deeper issues, and you do want to actually be part of that, I guess, generational growth. You know, let's look at the generational trauma and understand it, but let's be part of the generational growth. And I think that's what you're both doing through the understanding and the empathy that is lived understanding and empathy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And both of you have got a story. And I know that's what kind of your relationship together is a story in itself as well, isn't it?
Oh, God.
So like there's like that three-pronged thing going on here. It's the separate stories and then the story together. So let's look at you for a bit, Karla, and we'll come back to you because we know there's a story there. You've sort of led us beautifully there. But let's understand you a little bit more as well, Karla, and you know, what brings you to this point?
What brings me to this point? Well, I think me and Karl have been together now for 10 years, and along the way there's been so many ups and downs, and I think from the minute that I met him, it was kind of like I've always been a bit of a rescuer, so not always as relationships that I've been in worked out. So my first ever relationship ended up being pretty bad. It ended up with quite a bit of domestic violence, and I come away from that with quite a lot of trauma. I went into another relationship which ended up being really bad, and during that relationship I ended up meeting Karl, and then when I then met Karl, things were good, so our life was good together, and I thought, like, this is it, settle down. And then probably about 4 years into that relationship, things went completely downhill. Karl had a lot of problems, and my whole entire life just got flipped upside down, and almost everything that I'd ever been through before didn't quite live up to how bad it actually was at that moment in time. That was probably the worst. And things were very, very bad. The kids witnessed some stuff that you wouldn't want your children to witness. We had some social services involvement. My mental health went right downhill. There was a lot of times when I felt like I didn't even want to wake up in the morning. And over that period of time, it was difficult, very difficult. And then I never thought that things would really get better. And then things did get better. And then from that, we've then tried to work on our relationship and tried to enjoy life together. And then we've got to where we are now, where we've decided to do something together. So that's how we've got a nice project where...
Because I mean, it's fair to say that your mental health at that point was, well, it wasn't there at all, was it? There was no health involved with the
No,
sort of way that you were living.
I was crazy,
Yeah.
literally crazy. I think the thing where I've had like the drug issues that I've had in the past, because I had it in my head that because I wasn't taking the stuff that I originally had the problem with, then I'm cool.
Yeah, of course. You sort of thought, all right, that bit's
Yeah,
done. Don't worry
but I
about the
weren't.
rest.
So even though I wasn't taking that said drug, I was taking other stuff.
Yeah.
So I was always on something. So something that was mind altering, I was taking.
Yeah.
Whether that would be, cannabis, whether it be cocaine, like I was taking something.
Yeah.
And then it just got worse and worse and worse. But all along behind that, I've got all the other stuff that I've tried to avoid. But in all honesty, I didn't know I was even trying to avoid it.
No, this is the interesting thing, because the brain it's gone into that self-soothing behavior, like the firefighting.
Yeah.
There's a flame somewhere. I need to put that fire out. The drugs, the alcohol, that works. But that's not necessarily a conscious thing that's going on subconsciously, that firefighting, self-soothing behavior. You're not going, oh, ABC happened to me, so I'll do this and that will make me feel better. It's a very unconscious process. The brain is looking to stay alive. And if it feels by putting out those flames that it makes you feel like you're not in the fight flight anymore, which is what you were saying about heroin, then that's what it will do.
Yeah.
It's maladaptive for sure, but it does for the young person, and that's usually where the addictions start. It works.
She knows everything about me.
Yeah.
She always has. And I think if anything, anybody else around me, she knew a lot more.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, like, we'd have conversations. We'd talk about it quite, I'd always be off my nut when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You would never catch me doing it like, sober, as to say.
Yeah.
Because that would be a very uncomfortable moment for me. But it'd all have to be done under the influence.
Yeah.
Which most of the honesty would come out. But there'd be elements of, when it's like, Carla says this all the time. It's like when you're trying to force somebody to do something they don't want to do, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And where she wanted what she wanted for me, she was trying her hardest to get that, but I just didn't want it.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't ready for that at that point. So that's where then my behavior started to get more erratic.
So her trying to rescue was triggering you.
Yeah, she would tell you.
Oh, it was awful. This is what you talk about when you was on a heroin.
Yeah,
it was bad. So I always felt like for a period of time, I felt like I could get him off it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up putting myself right in the firing line, which is where it's where the only ever domestic incidents that have ever happened within our 10-year relationship ever happened.
Yeah.
During the times that I was trying to prevent him from getting it, trying to stop him from taking it. And yeah, there was a lot of bad stuff that we haven't really covered, have we? We haven't really gone into detail with it.
No,
but
I don't remember half of it. So the only time I'll remember this stuff, well, not even remember, she just tells me.
Yeah.
And then what I'll try and do is bat it off.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really like that.
You don't want to know.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's not me. So that was a different person.
Yes, a different version of you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because that's just not me. I don't behave like that. So having to hear it, I'm better with it.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, because this is her thing, and like it's not. I can't just. It's unfair for me to block that out, which I had done for a long time. But it's not. We do kind of talk now a little bit more. We still probably could do more than what we do, but it's
It's getting there.
Yeah.
I always say it's a process, because you'll do blocks of that talking, blocks of healing. It can't all go in like, oh, let's do six, like you were saying about the off camera earlier, when you're working with kids, you don't just have 6 weeks and it's sorted. It's blocks of healing, and you go back, and you have to sort of do it when you're ready as well, because it can re-traumatize you, as you're saying, which is definitely not what anyone wants.
Well, it's the fact of like, I can't remember stuff. So for the trauma size for me, no, I wouldn't say it's more for her, but I can't. I just take her word for what's happened.
You just feel the shame.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's well like below the belt for that kind of stuff. For males to behave and react like that towards a woman, it's just not. It's not a clap hand scenario. And
this is where you're taking accountability.
Yeah.
You clearly are taking accountability now, but equally, like you say, it was a version of you that was unwell. This isn't a version of you that just woke up in the morning and thought, right, I'm going to be an absolute pig today. You were unwell, and you were dealing with your own traumas by blocking them and not even knowing that you were doing that.
Yeah, but it's just that it's on the other side. It's just a shame that that had to happen.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just obviously that my kids as well. And it's,
Yeah.
you know, that there's a whole massive hit on that. Isn't there?
It even affects us to this day. So our children, the result of what happened, our children ended up going on a child protection plan. They was on it for 3 months. They was classed as at risk of emotional harm. So yeah, they ended up going on the register. We managed to get them off it after 3 months, and yeah, it still sticks with us to this day. There's still things that pop up now that have because of them going on that register. It still comes back to haunt us even years down the line. Like recently with
I was going to say this, you know, it impacted the work that you're doing. I know it's a show that you've done on Channel 5, and you were doing, I won't say too much because I'm not sure if you can, but you were doing a show on Channel 5, and then on the day you were filming.
The day before. Yeah. So on the Saturday we was due to film for Channel 5. On the Friday, I got a phone call from the casting director to say that it can't go ahead. The child entertainment licenses have been turned down. So basically, whenever you do any film, whenever any children are involved in any kind of filming, it has to be done with this specific protocol. So they have to get child licenses from the council to make sure that there's going to be what's that person called? What was that lady called?
Chaperone.
Chaperone. Yeah. So there has to be like a chaperone.
Oh, she was wicked as well.
Yeah,
was she?
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
So it has to all be done properly, and they have to apply for these licenses. And 9 times out of 10, they never get turned down. But yeah, so we thought everything was all smooth. Day before, all excited, kids are all excited. They're coming tomorrow. Everything's ready to go. And I get this phone call to say the child licenses have been turned down. And they wasn't allowed to tell them why. So it had to come, I had to find out what the reason behind it was. So I phoned them up, couldn't get hold of anybody. They was in meetings, waited until they was out, finally got hold of someone at 11 o'clock. And I was on the phone for 5 hours in the end, trying to find out why on earth they'd been turned down, which they couldn't give me proper reasons for. And it's all linked into the fact that they must have typed the kids' names into a system and seen that once upon a time they'd been on these protection plans.
Yeah.
And so it's that stigma that sticks with you, even though, you know, one of our children wasn't even born then, was she? She wasn't even alive. She's never been on a protection plan in her life. So even affecting a child that's, you know.
And the fact is that, as you said to me earlier, you had actually tried to actively involve social services, but they didn't listen.
Yeah, so when things were really bad...
That was in the October, wasn't it?
Yeah, so in the October time, this is when he'd been on the drugs for a while. There'd been I'd phoned the police on a few occasions when his behaviour had started to get a bit aggressive, and I'd phoned the police to try to have him removed from the property before anything else would happen to reduce the risk, to stop my kids from having to witness anything, to stop any arguments from happening. I just wanted him to get out. And if he'd refused, then I would end up phoning the police, trying to put my foot down really and just say, I'm not going to put up with this. And they would come round and remove him from the property. But then on other occasions, they'd find him out. Like one occasion, a member of the public had phoned up the police because they'd thought he was dead outside a co-op on the floor at 2 o'clock in the middle of the winter, laid on the floor, and the police would pick him up and bring him back to my house. Bearing in mind, 2 days before, I'd had police calls to get him removed. And all these police calls were going through to social services, and they were supposed to allocate a social worker to us, but because of we wasn't classed as a priority because of the there's not many in the funding cuts and stuff, there wasn't enough social workers to go round, so we missed out. And it was during that time that over the next coming months that things got drastically worse. To the point where there was a really bad incident, which was the very final incident, when he was removed from the family home. The social services at that point tried to put me in a refuge.
Wow.
They tried to put me in a women's refuge. I wasn't allowed to stay in my house for 2 weeks, had to be removed. I wasn't allowed back there until they'd completely done security and put up. I had to have alarms on all of the windows and doors. I had to have a fireproof safety letterbox put through. Like, it was really bad.
Not that I'd have set fire to the house.
No,
or anything.
No,
Like,
but
do you know what I
they
mean?
just do it as
Yeah,
a
but the thing is,
precaution.
when they did all this, I'd already gone. I
Yeah.
I wasn't there anymore.
Too late, weren't it?
So, and what they did was they tried to brainwash her into, you know, if you don't get all these things put in place and this non-molestation orders and stuff, we'll take your kids. It's like,
I had to
Wow.
go, at that point, I
So-
had to go to court myself, as if I wanted to. I actually crashed my car on the way to court.
Oh my
On the way
God.
to a solicitor, not on the way to court, I ended up crashing my car on the way to a solicitor's. I had to go and get a child arrangements order, a non-molestation order, and a prohibited steps order. So I had to get 3 orders out on him. Bearing in mind, I'd already put my foot down and said, enough's enough, get out of my house. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. He'd left, and he went and we went and stayed in a crack house.
I was in a crack house for 3 months, yeah.
3
God.
months.
Yeah.
And then social services got involved, but it was
Too late.
Too late. All
Yeah.
the damage had been done.
Yeah.
I was already traumatised. The kids had seen what they'd seen, and I'd asked for help back in October and didn't get it. So it's just, yeah, there was so many flaws in the system, which obviously leads me to this is why I'm so passionate about the stuff that we do within our project, because
Yeah.
I know how difficult times have been, not only for myself but my children.
And the knock-on effect, like you said
Yeah.
earlier, when someone isn't well and they're not getting the help they need,
Yep.
and the systems are flawed, the parents, the partners, the community, the services, everything is affected.
The thing
massively.
but even within that, like, you know, I did that 3 months that I'd done, but whilst I was having to do this, there was obviously set things that you had to do with social services at the time, and there was we had to do this thing. What was it, like a section 7 report, wasn't it?
Yes. It was Section 7.
Yeah, and in that report, that obviously looks at all my history.
Yeah.
Which even stuff from my teenage years they tried to use against me for my adult life.
Wow.
Which I didn't see how that fit. It
And
didn't
also
make
because
sense.
from a point of view of clinical, sorry to put in there, but if you're going to look at a teenager, their brain isn't developed. I said this to you earlier. Your brain isn't developed till you're 21 to 25.
Yeah.
So what we do in our teenage years, it doesn't mean that we're not responsible, because obviously we have some complex thinking.
Yeah.
But the prefrontal cortex, which does logic, decision making, analysis,
Yeah.
emotional regulation, it's not fully developed until you're 21, 25. So to use your teenage years against you when you're an adult is just ridiculous.
It wasn't even relevant to the said incident.
It was fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I discussed, which I'll talk about later, was some abuse that had happened to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And I told them who the person were, and gone through obviously childhood, doing a bit of background. And then when the report had come back, they named the person wrong and named my different uncle family member.
Oh
So
my
it
God.
wasn't
That he
even
got on with
the
really
one I
well.
actually got on well with
Yeah.
and took me in as a child. And it was like, what? Like,
So the information you gave to them, they didn't do their due diligence and they named the wrong person.
yeah.
Really bad.
But then we had one meeting originally. So the first child protection meeting that we went to, which they put things onto the walls of stuff that needs to be done and completed by the time you get to the next thing. And I was already starting to do this stuff anyway. Luckily, I had obviously Karla as my baby mum, because
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that all mums are the same, but there's some mums that wouldn't be as supportive out there for that, the partner had actually caused all this aggro in the first place. But luckily she knew that wasn't me anyway. But she still backed me up, and she still knew that that Carl was in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I put myself forward for anger management. And I thought this needs to be done because I have got some issues, and I've always been an angry person anyway, throughout my life. And they used it against me for going for anger management, which was going to be paid for out of my own pocket. And they literally used that against me for doing it.
We had there's a lot of social workers out there that are brilliant.
Oh yeah, I work with many of them.
Of course, we must say
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
There
really
always
good.
are,
It's just
yeah.
that we weren't so lucky. The one that we had wasn't very good. It just wasn't good. I did actually end up putting in complaints against her, and I found out my rights, and I realised that I could actually have her changed to a different one. But during that time, do you remember the meeting I got with her manager? I actually got a meeting, and I went to the manager, her management, to complain and say that I wanted a different social worker and explain all the situations, what had gone on. And when I was in, she was no better. Honestly, when I went into the room, the first minute that I sat in there, she slammed her hands down on the table, made me jump out of my skin, and told me clearly I was a traumatised domestic violence victim. Honestly.
From slamming her hands on the
made
table.
me
Now,
jump
who
off
wouldn't
it.
jump? If I was to do that now without you realising, you'd also jump,
Of
wouldn't
course.
you?
Well, anyone would. It's the natural response in our system to...
Yeah. Because this is why they did this, because they couldn't have anything on me anymore. Because I was clean. I was given negative samples.
They tried to change it to me.
Tried to change it onto her instead so they could still keep their involvement with our kids. But there was no longer needed to be involved. So, and this was our argument, because I was now clean. I'd sorted myself out.
Yeah.
The judge had given me responsibility.
Wow.
So I basically stuck with what was decided at the original court case, that I was going to do this by said date.
Yeah.
I did it. and they wanted to get involved. They couldn't do anything more for me. And then they switched it to her and changed it to her mental health instead of me because they had nothing left
Well, that's
for me.
gaslighting.
Exactly, and as if I hadn't already been through enough. I'm the mother of 3 children. I'm a single mother.
They're
of
now
3
abusing
children.
you.
That's what it felt like that, and this is why I'm, like I say again, back to the project. I'm so passionate about it because I feel like not only did I not have anyone, but I've almost felt like my whole life was already bad enough. But then all this other additional stress from services that are supposed to be there to support you. So we had a really bad experience with that, didn't we? And I think in some ways that drove us back together in a sort of strong sort of way. Because
I get that, yeah.
Oddly, it ended up actually, we're now both fighting for our children on both sides of things, but actually together. So we ended up getting it where we both attended the court. We had all these restrictions in place because obviously there was a non-molestation order, so I couldn't be near him, he couldn't be near me.
Course,
In the end, we went in separately, and I said to the judge, "Take it away." He's been going down there voluntarily and producing drugs tests to prove that he's not taken any drugs, and he was doing that every couple of days.
And I was also volunteering at a drug and alcohol service free of time every day from 8:30 till 4 every day.
Which is where someone's really doing the work, because it's like that whole 12 steps thing, the sponsor,
without the 12 steps, without the sponsor, didn't even do it with that.
That's amazing, because I know actually not everyone does, although that is a good process.
Each to their own.
Each to their own.
Yeah.
Some people do it without and can do it without. Amazing.
Yeah, so I went to the judge and I said, "Can you just remove it? I don't feel like I don't need protecting. Like nothing's ever happened other than when he's been on these drugs. He's not on these drugs anymore," and he removed it.
Wow.
Against the social service. They didn't want it. They didn't like it. The lady, the social worker that we had, she wasn't for it, was she? But once that then happened, we was then allowed in the same room together. So when it come to where the children was on, exactly, because the children were on the register, it's 3 months before it gets reviewed, and then they usually go back on it for another 6 months.
Yes.
It's not often that they come off, but we got in the room together, like, showed everything that we'd done. I'd gone off and I had some domestic violence intervention, and we got into the room together and we managed to get them off.
That just is unbelievable.
But there was a bit around that. So bearing in mind the social services, whilst they're on CP plans, for example, they have what do they call it? They have a plan in place where they have to see them, I think it's like every 10 to 14 days.
Right.
That's family and obviously said people that's involved. They didn't see us for 64.
Yeah,
so
they didn't stick to their own protocols.
So within that, obviously, we were still seeing other services outside of social services that we're seeing as regular once a week, for example.
Yeah.
So they go round the room and they point you from 0 being really high risk to 10 being no risk whatsoever. So I was being pointed 7, 8, 8, 9, like all the way around the room, and it got to our social worker and she pointed me a 2 and a 3.
Oh my goodness!
But she ain't seen me for 64 days. So that's basically, I think, was the calling card for us to be off that CP plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
She basically dug her own grave for it.
And then we even had so the S7 report that she'd filed that went through to the judge. Even the judge actually called for her to come and show herself to explain why what she'd written at S7. The S7 basically said that from everything that had gone on, it would be better if the kids don't see him again, and that eventually they'd forget about him. When we've got all of this, I said to you earlier on the way up here, because we was going to talk about this, which is something we've never talked about before in podcasts. We was going to bring, I wish we'd have brought some of the stuff, because we've got it all. We've got a big file that's got everything in there, including the letters that I'd written complaining, just absolutely everything in there.
Yeah.
And the judge actually asked for the social worker to come and show herself, and the manager writ back saying that she was on annual leave that day, so she couldn't come in. And due to the low level of social workers available, there wouldn't be anyone to represent. However, if anybody really needed to speak, she would be willing to speak on the phone, the manager. This is the one that slammed her hands on the table. So we went back to the court, and the court gave him complete access back to his kids, and there was nothing in place after that. And
the minute we was taken off the CP plan, we never heard from him since.
And that was that.
That was
Chapter closed.
God. Done and dusted.
I mean,
goosebumps.
I know. I said to you before, I don't want to know too much before we start, because I want to have those jaw-dropping moments, and that one is one there. Like, what the fuck? I mean, that literally is just so... I mean, as we say, and I want to just reiterate, obviously there are great social workers.
Yeah.
I work with a few now
I know,
who
I
are
know.
brilliant, and I wish they would have been my social
Yes.
worker at that said time,
Yeah.
because they are really, really good. You could probably, let's say out of 10 social workers, you'll probably get 2 that are
That's the
really
same in
bad.
In
any
any,
job,
yeah,
yeah.
this
Do you
is
know
the
what I
thing.
mean? Not all of them, and I don't want anyone to think that, because they're there for they're a service, and they're there
And
to
they
help and
need it.
support.
They are
Yeah,
needed.
definitely. I work closely with them now, and I
Yeah.
would never, I'd never, you know, tar them like we're discussing with kids with bad behavior. I'd never tar them all with the same.
No, you
paintbrush.
can't
Like,
do that. But this is your story.
Yeah.
And
It's
this
sad that
really
it has to
happened.
Yeah.
be that way,
And
but-
it will have happened to other people as well. And what I love about that story is that you are together, stronger than ever, here telling the story, being completely authentic, completely truthful, and doing the work with communities to change the narrative.
Yeah.
And to actually, like I said, be part of generational growth. And if you're going to go through any pain in life, whatever that pain is, usually it's repeated pain, isn't it? Because generational trauma creates trauma upon trauma upon trauma. It's layers. But if you're going to go and, you know, then change the narrative for other people and educate people and be stronger together, which is the whole two's a duo thing, isn't it? Like you say, 2 heads are better than one and all of that. If you're going to do that together, then that's magic.
It is, but I would like to say, because I know what some people would probably like to say is, like, you know, if I wouldn't have done that, none of this would have happened in the first place.
Yeah, but we don't know why you did that yet, do we?
No, exactly. But the thing is, like, you know, there is always reasons behind people's behaviours, and this is the thing. I didn't. I was under the influence. I didn't choose to be like that.
And addiction,
but I
is
did
not
choose
a choice.
to take the drug.
Well, you know, it's a choice in the fact that you choose to put it in your mouth. But what I'm saying is what I said earlier, and this is my genuine belief, right, about any addiction, whether it be to a substance, to a behaviour or whatever. It's someone trying to escape a reality.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier you were abused, right? So when a child is abused, they self-abandon, first of all, because they don't have the capacity to really analyse and be logical about what's going on. And we know much more about the trauma to the brain and the trauma to the nervous system now. And when you are abused as a child, there is so much that you cannot express because you don't know how to. There's so much that you cannot let go of because you don't know how to.
Yeah.
And there's so much physical pain. And I mean that by, you know, the brain, the way it adapts, you stay in fight, flight. For anyone that's ever been there, and I have been there, to judge someone for escaping it, especially a child who doesn't know how else to deal with it, when they haven't got the support to be able to deal with it, that bit isn't a choice. That bit's not a choice.
No, I know. But it's just from just alongside with the whole scenario with social services, it was a result of my behaviour.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you have to basically take it on the chin with
Of
everything that's
course
thrown
you
at
do.
you. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
So that's what I'm meaning when I'm saying in that way. Yeah, it's obviously I do take full responsibility for all of it, rather whether I remember any of it or not. It happened. The paperwork's there as living proof. She's living proof. Do you know what I mean?
Although the circumstances leading up to that, it didn't just happen out of nowhere.
It's not like you were. That's what I'm trying to say. I get that it's a choice to do it, but it isn't just a case of. And so many people will label addicts as, well, they choose to do it. It's you just don't do it. That's a lot of people that don't understand addiction. Don't do it. Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, I didn't realise there was a choice that I didn't have to do it. Thanks so much. If it was that simple, you never wanted to hurt people. I'm pretty sure of it. Like you say, that version of you doesn't exist right now, and you are completely. This is who you are. You know, as someone who isn't an addict. But there's a whole reason that happened. Like I say, it's escapism, it's self-soothing, it's putting out the flames of pain, and it's doing it at a time when you haven't got the right support. So tell us more about that, if you would, because I think it gives context to the behaviour that led to that whole situation.
Jesus. So, okay. Well, I've had a couple of traumatic things happen in my life. Knife crime obviously being one of them, which I said earlier. I've been stabbed a couple of times, lost my friend and whatever, but that's been said on many other podcasts already, so I don't need, you know, divulging into that information, you know. But it's like the more I think the more traumatic stuff is just childhood based, where one of the main things that I think has bothered me for the most of my life is sexual abuse. So it was something happened from when I was 9 by an uncle. that I was close with, to be honest with you. Like it was I didn't see any wrong in it originally.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what was going on.
Because you're so young, you
And
haven't got
I
that awareness.
was with him all the time.
Mm.
I was always with uncles and aunties or grandparents at the times because my parents was always out on the music scene, so we was always with a babysitter. So he was my babysitter for quite a long time. So as well as my brother and sister, and it was one of them like you've got a family member where you're allowed to get away with things, and that's the uncles or aunties that you'd like to go to because you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And he was giving me cannabis, so I was smoking cannabis, and at that age I was having the giggles and sitting there laughing for 3 hours, and it was hilarious, but nothing was happening at that point.
Yeah, that's the grooming part.
It was slow process, and if I ever was supposed to be home by the time the street lights are on, for say in the 90s when we used to have to be in for street lights.
I remember that was your time zone. Yeah.
So if I was late past that time, I knew I'd get a good hiding when I go home. So do I go home for the good hiding or do I run away from home? I'd run away from home and I'd go to my uncle's, and I know he'd be at the pub around the corner because he used to love a drink, and I'd just put the ladders out of his shed and climb up to up through his bedroom window, and I'd be on the sofa downstairs by the time he got home. But my parents used to know where to find me. At this time, still, he hasn't done anything to me yet. And so and then I'd be drinking alcohol. So I'd be swiping his bitter. Didn't like the taste of it. It was jank, but it was still alcohol. I was allowed to drink it. Quick, drink it. Do you know what I mean? And have a bit of weed as well, because he used to grow it in his shed, and he had a lot of homegrown stuff and that. And and that's how it started. So the first initial time that this happened, he'd got me stoned, and he'd bought a pool table. Now, this pool table, he had a spare room. He had 3 bedrooms in the house. His bedroom, one bedroom on the right of his bedroom, and the spare room was next door to his. And it was a big room. It's basically the size of ours, to be honest with you. And he had a pool table in there. And that was brilliant. Fucking hell, he's got a pool table in there. That's fun. We'll go over there and crack around with the pool balls and stuff and have some fun. So we was playing pool, pissing around and that, smoking weed at the same time whilst we were playing pool, because I've been smoking it a bit now, so I weren't choking every time I took a poke of a spliff.
You're, like I say, you conditioned now, aren't you?
I got used to it. So it then started. He come up with an idea. Now, he'd just broken up with my auntie Lorna, which is my cousin's mum, and she'd taken my cousin to Newcastle or Durham, I think it were. They'd gone up there, and he'd lost the plot. At this point, he was drinking and smoking like there was no tomorrow, getting in scraps in the pubs, coming back with black eyes and all this. And this one night, he decided it'd be a good idea to play strip pool. That was how it started.
Right.
And how am I going to win that? Like, I'm 9. There was no way I was going to win anything on that. But on a couple of occasions, he'd allow me to win the game, so he'd have to take an item of clothing off. It was still going to result in me being birthday suited in that room, and he's still in something.
Yeah.
But I was smashed, like literally under the influence. Like I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was the first night that it happened. That night, forcibly. I didn't want it. So that was forcibly. So really, he raped me on that night. So yeah.
That's an awful thing to go through, because we're just saying about choice and behaviours a minute ago, and I'm saying to you, well, people that use these things to escape, you were groomed with drugs, and that's your brain at the age of 9 is conditioned to that because it was part of the abuse.
Yeah.
And then something awful and horrific happens, and I'm sure that the drugs carried on being a part of what was essentially his way of getting to do what he wanted to do to you.
Well, you'd think that after that occasion that'd be, that'll keep you away.
Yeah.
But there was so much more surrounding my childhood which kept me from saying anything.
Yeah.
So I was a troublesome kid. I'd had other things that had happened to me before that traumatic. My behaviour was really erratic.
Yeah.
So I was known as that problem child, and I lied a lot. So as I've said many times before, boy cries wolf. No one believes you.
Yeah.
And he used that So he used that to manipulate me. No one will
Nobody will
believe you
believe you,
anyway. And then I'd always hear him saying that in the back of my head. Always hear him say that. So there was no real way of even coming out with it. Or how would you even come out with it? Like,
Yeah.
I'll just randomly drop it out at the dinner
But
table.
people think
like,
it's easy. Why didn't you say anything? I mean, how the amount if I had £1 for every time someone said, "Why didn't you say anything?" I would be very wealthy. You can't. You physically feel like you can't say the words.
I was scared.
Of
Like,
course.
my uncle was a scary man.
Yeah.
So it's, I had a few uncles and all of them were scary. They all
Yeah.
could have a tear up. They was
Yeah.
all very well known in my area.
Yeah.
Like, they were scary men. Like, they could have a proper scrap.
Yeah.
And it was, and I didn't know what to do. So I put up with that. Every time I went there, it happened from then on. And in the end, it wasn't even the fact of like, yeah, okay, I'll be being raped, but I wasn't literally being forcibly like held down, kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
Well, you're conditioned again.
Yeah.
That word is so important here. You're conditioned to what's going to happen. It becomes the norm.
And that's it. And it just continued from there. And it was just one of them, oh, here we go again, kind of thing. And and obviously my brother and sister were staying at the house a lot as well. And I could have gone to my grandparents and stayed at my grandparents, because I did get on really well with them, and I stayed with my granddad quite a lot. I used to love being around my gran. But, there wasn't room for all of us. So it was either I'd go to my grand's or go to my uncle's, and my brother and sister go, so I just chose to be with them.
Do you understand that? Do you understand that you were like, because I think a lot of people are like, why would I go there when I knew what was going to happen? Do you understand when I say conditioning? Do you understand what I mean by that fully?
No.
It's like you're programmed. When I was talking about the prefrontal cortex earlier, because there isn't the ability to analyze.
Yeah.
There isn't the ability to be logical and make good decisions. You also don't have the ability to regulate emotions properly. That's why children, teenagers in particular, can be troublesome, because they can't regulate anything. When you groom a child, you're literally wiring their brain.
Yeah.
So when I say conditioned, what I mean is that he may as well have got a needle and thread and wired your brain the way he wanted it, sewed all those patterns in so that you would be compliant, and actually you would feel like you were doing it through free will. But these people, they program you to behave the way they want you to behave, so you feel like you're compliant.
Which he had that.
Yeah.
And with things, obviously the weed, obviously by that point I used to love smoking it. It was fun. The drinking the alcohol, it went from like me not drinking the bitter no more because he knew I didn't like it, and it went to like spirits.
Yes.
Like, let's say I think whiskey was one of them, which was really like fiery on the chest.
Yeah,
it was really
yeah.
burny, but it used to get me smashed pretty quickly, especially with a spliff.
Yeah.
And then it'll be money.
Yeah.
Because obviously we weren't well off. I say obviously like everyone knows me, but we had no money growing up. We was quite strapped. Parents just worked to pay the bills and stuff.
Yeah,
it's good for them. They provided, but I couldn't get no pocket money or anything like that. He'd give me some. He'd give me money, so that was cool.
Yeah. So they're the things you're going back for.
Yeah, I was going back for it. And then even with that happening at that point, like I say, I used to run away from home. Where was the place that I'd go? To his.
Yeah.
Even if that was going to happen, I'd still end up back there.
Yeah.
But, that went on for 3 years. He was also doing the next door neighbour's kid as well. He was abusing him. And I used to think they all adds up afterwards, because he was coming around the house a lot.
Yeah.
And there was this one day, that he was just about to do something, and this kid next door, he shot through the letterbox, and he basically saved it from happening.
Oh wow!
What was going to happen? Yeah, and he basically stopped that from happening, and that was the last time that had happened.
Is that because you then never went back, or is that because
he got nicked?
Right.
So this boy that had been coming around, he'd been being abused for a couple of years as well. He was older than me. He was about 14, 15. And he had a girlfriend as well. He weren't into the male sex or anything.
Yeah.
He was, I don't know what was going on with them, to be fair, probably the same as me.
Yeah.
And he was having girlfriends, and he was bringing them around to my uncle's house, and he was manipulating my uncle. So he was doing the reverse. Even though he was still being touched up in that way himself, he was also being the abuser to my uncle by bringing women around, causing mental health issues for my uncle because he's seeing him with a girl.
Right.
Crazy scenario.
Yeah.
So my uncle went and handed himself in at the police, drunk one night, and said that he'd been having a sexual relationship with said boy. Not me, didn't mention me. said boy. He then got arrested, and he was remanded. They raided his house, found 37 black bags filled with cannabis in the shed, homegrown. Well, I think there might have been the loft, one or two. I can't remember if it was the loft or the shed outside. And that was then I'd come back from school. My mum had asked me to walk her to the bus stop to work, which was random. She'd never asked me that before. So I did. She asked me the question outright, has your uncle ever done anything to you? And I'm like, the fuck? No.
Yeah, straight away. No.
Straight away, no. And I'm thinking, why the hell is she asking me that? Because she didn't tell me at first. So I was like, no, why? And she was like, no reason, just asking. And I was like, okay. And she was like, are you sure? And she kept badgering on about it. I'm thinking, why is she asking me that? And I got scared then because I was hearing, like, I don't believe you. Oh, why are you saying anything? At this point, I didn't know he'd been nicked. I didn't know he'd been arrested.
Right.
So I could have turned around and said, yeah. And then he's come round my house. Like, why are you saying stuff like that?
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect at that point.
Which is that's a good bit of the story, actually, because it tells us when you ask a child a question, give context to the question.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm blaming your mum for that, but, make sure the child knows something and enough so that they will actually feel safe to
so
tell
you can
the
trust
truth.
that fact you're safe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel safe at that point. No.
Unknown. There's so much unknown.
Oh my God, that was one of the worst scenarios to be in at that point. And I was just like, what do I say? So I sat on it for a bit.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything. And I stewed on it for the night. And then I went back to school the next day. And then that day was the day I decided, well, I asked her the question and I said, why was you asking me them questions yesterday? And she told me that he'd been arrested for what he'd done. I can't remember the word she used, but there was a word that she used with the next door neighbour's kid. His name was Mark. I don't even know who he is anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so as soon as she said that to me,
did she say he was molesting him?
Something
that's the
like
word that they usually use, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember if I can't remember the word she used. It was basically on the lines that he'd been, doing acts of insane stuff to him.
Yeah.
And the minute that she said at that point in that walk that he'd been arrested, I instantly said, yeah, he's done it to me. Straight away. It's straight come out.
Yeah.
And then I had to. Well, she obviously went mad straight away. She phoned into work saying she weren't coming into work. Imagine if she'd have gone to work as well. I feel like I've just told you that.
Oh, God, you wouldn't be able to.
You're not going to have the day off work
No.
then, Mum. But she had the day off work, went back in the house, sat in front of my stepdad. I had to tell him exactly what I just told my mum. He went absolutely berserk.
Yeah.
But by this point, obviously, he's already locked up, so there's no harm that can come to him anyway. And then it was just set up for me to have to discuss everything via cameras in front of police. Men police as well, which was the worst. That was so uncomfortable.
Of course, I mean they really should have had at least a female and a male.
Men,
or giving you the choice.
The choice.
Didn't have the choice, and it was I felt so much anxiety in that situation.
Oh,
and
it's
as a
awful.
kid, I was giggling and stuff.
Yeah.
Whilst I was going through what he was doing to me, and I mean going through what he was doing to me. Like obviously, I'm not going to go into detail, but like some of this stuff was ruthless.
Yes.
And I had to talk about this on camera. And I've got these men asking me questions about what another man has done to me.
Which is just, I mean, how old are you at that point?
13.
13, yeah.
So I'm in secondary school at this point now. So, and I'm basically at that age now where my own puberty is starting, and it was just a weird scenario.
Yeah.
Going forward, my case was dropped from court. So there was no conviction for my incident. So there was nothing. So, 3 years of going through something as traumatic as that. Well, I say going through something as traumatic at that, but like you said about being conditioned, it wasn't traumatic at the time it was happening. It was just after when it had all come out.
Yes.
That's where the trauma had hit me.
Well, because you're desensitized when it's happening.
So then I'd had that sense of exactly what I'd just been through.
Yeah.
And I'd literally, as a male, I've been raped by a man. And it was, so that was hard to look at because then I was very, very confused after that. I didn't know who I were, why that happened to me.
Yeah.
Was I gay now?
Yeah.
I was questioning a lot of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And I wasn't getting the right answers.
Why was that case dropped, by the way? Because he'd already admitted doing it to someone else.
So I think it was following from my police interview, to be honest with you.
Do you know what I've always said? We've had this conversation. I've always said that perhaps they already had so much so much with maybe not only did they not have the funding, maybe they just didn't want to put him through it, because you see that sometimes in court, because they have a big enough case with one. Sometimes you see that they don't always follow up another.
But that should have been explained if that's the case.
Yeah, it should have.
Because that's another way that service has let you down.
Yeah, and I think from following from that, I just hated the world. So my anger came out.
Yeah, as you would expect.
So that's their now behaviour.
Yeah.
So what the result of my behaviour, then I was put into behavioural therapy. Like, I don't need behavioural therapy, mate. Like, and I know this now when I look back. That's not what I needed.
No.
And I was sat in this room with this woman. I hated her.
Yeah.
She was a funny woman. Like,
well, yeah, I've talked about this openly. I had awful experiences.
Yeah. And she just was unhelpful.
Yeah.
On certain occasions, like I was knocking chairs over in them. I just didn't like her.
Yeah.
And it might be at school I was fighting. And I wasn't a fighter at that age. I didn't want to hurt anybody. What I used to do as a kid, I'd be that scared to punch someone in the face, I'd kick him in the shin and run off. Like, that was me.
That's my
height, yeah. I was probably up to their shins, to be honest with you. I was only about 3 foot at 14 years old. But yeah, I was never really into the violence kind of stuff at 13 years old. But I am now.
Yeah.
And that all started coming out. And again, I got involved in boxing and put my anger into that.
Oh, you did.
But I got excluded from school for scrapping. I beat up my bully in school. Yeah. Finally, I weighed him in school, and it all came out. And again, confusing. I was always told to always hit the bigger one, and stick up for yourself. And then I'd finally done it, and I was punished for it. And it was just like, Jesus
it didn't
Christ.
make sense.
I'm like a yo-yo here, like I'm coming and going. And then it kind of went from there, and then that's where my gang lifestyle started.
Oh, right. So that takes us from, and you're like 13, 14, 15, around that time. And when we talk about gang, are we like, to give context to that, friends? Yeah. And these are people that are looking after you, and you feel safe with them, and they understand you, or at least you feel like you fit in with them. That kind of.
Yeah, there was a mixture of older lads. I've always been wrapped around older people, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Whether that would be because of the abuse, because it was happening with older people, I don't know. I've never yet got my head around that, and I've always been attracted to older people.
Yeah.
To chill with. And that I was finding that in a youth club, because sometimes youth clubs are breeding grounds for this stuff.
I know.
That's why they need to be properly staffed and have proper trained people in there like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That little advert.
Now, if you're looking for somebody, but yeah, and I was like, as kids, like I said before, we had no money. I wanted to eat the Walker's crisps.
Yeah, and
I wanted
have
to
all
have
the best foods.
Yeah,
and
of course.
everything.
And these older kids was eating all that in these youth clubs with the tuck shops and stuff, and I didn't have the money for that.
So were they, when you talk about the older kids that were eating all the food and that were doing all the sort of, were they then targeting you because they knew that you didn't have that?
No, I was lead myself to them.
Right.
All right, boys.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be like, oh, what's that? Oh, can I have a crisp? Like, cheeky little shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, can I have a bit of that Coke? And it was just kind of like that. And I was a likable kid. I wasn't a knob. Do you know what I mean? I was just that cute little blonde hair kid. I think I've got a picture on my Instagram of me when I was like that age, 13, 14. I just looked like an innocent blonde hair kid.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that the stuff I was involved in or possibly would have happened to me by looking at me.
Yes.
But it had, and if not worse. And that's, that was how it kind of escalated. And I then found myself, out on the streets then, and the behaviour was pure rebellious from any kind of rule or regulation that was thrown at me. I ain't sticking to it at all. And I think I blamed. Did I blame my mum on that? I always questioned why no one even realised or noticed that something like that was happening to their child.
That's a really big and important bit of reflection, isn't it? It's like, how was this going on? And I mean, what's your relationship like with your mum?
My mum's passed away now.
She's passed away now.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, yeah.
Did you ever get to have that conversation with her?
See, the thing with like, what was my mum like? When it comes to have conversations with my mum?
Yeah, she would never be so serious about it, would she?
No.
Difficult.
She'd
Probably a difficult subject for her.
Very
to be
difficult.
honest.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to take that away from my mum. You know, like that's. But still, it happened to me. At the end of the day, like to take that on the chin. But the thing is, my mum had an alcohol issue.
Right.
And I mean, my brother and sister will clearly say that my mum did have a drink issue, and I don't think I would have ever spoken like this about my mum if she was still here.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, she passed away of a heart attack a couple of years ago, and my sister found her. But it's like at that point, this is where I'm saying that all our stuff was just starting to come out now, where we was putting things out visually.
Yes.
And this was just after my mum had passed away.
Oh my God.
Now my story is able to be properly told without offending people.
Yeah.
Because my mum would have been offended quite easily.
Is your stepdad still around?
Yeah, I don't talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Not any like bad blood or anything really. Like, we've had our moments throughout our life, and I didn't like him, and he didn't like me.
Right.
And but he's still my sister's dad.
Yeah.
He's still my brother's dad, and he's still my niece and nephew's granddad. So he's still part of that side of the family. But I live in the southeast, so I don't really go to Nottingham too much. Probably once or twice a year if I'm lucky. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think my mum was a drinker, so she loved the drink, and it was only ever when she was drunk that this stuff would pop up.
Yeah.
And she'd sit there crying at the dinner table, wouldn't she? It was my fault that Trevor did that to you, and I will name him and all because he's dead. But she's like, it's my fault he's done that to you. I'm so sorry. And I used to say to her, why does it take you to be pissed to say this?
Yeah.
Or I love you. I'm so proud of you. I'm like, yeah, again, you're pissed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you take it with a pinch of salt. I'd like you to say sober.
Yes.
And I know I weren't going to get it out of her sober, because then the minute that you start talking to her about this stuff sober, she'll sit there like a naughty little kid in the corner with her Take a Break magazine, with looking like she's sucked on a lemon.
Just carrying so much guilt or confusion.
Yeah. And she's like that, wouldn't she? We'd make her dinner. We'd make her dinner, and I'd say something. She'd get the right arm, and she'd be like, I'm not hungry. And I'm like, what do you mean? I've just stood in the kitchen and I've just made you all that dinner. I'm not hungry. I don't want any food. And she'd sit there. Like with her magazine. Yeah, swear down. Like, she'd do what my 8-year-old Tyler would do. And but it was still my mum, and I loved her, and that was just my mum, and I was used to that, and I'd never take that away from her. You can't change it. It's happened, whatever. But there was still, I'd like to think, and we'd be able to pick something out with my kids.
Yes.
If anything was to be happening to my kids, I'd pick it out.
Well, when you're a parent, you do start to question, how on earth were the things that were happening to me being able to happen to me? Whether I was acting out or you were acting out or anyone, how are we doing this and no one's seeing the bigger picture? Because when you're a parent, you do see the bigger picture. And so it is a question that I think it haunts a lot of people. How was this able to happen for so long?
Yeah.
So by what age are you then? I mean, that, by the way, is that the first time you've told that story about being abused?
More in detail. Like, I've not spoken in detail like that, have I?
No, I'm proud of you for doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to just brush over that, because
no, it's fine.
You've been really,
Next.
really open.
No,
yeah.
You just want to get away from it, don't you?
No, but I'd like to go into detail with exactly what happened, but it's not the time.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to be quite careful of how explicit you actually are, especially, as I said, YouTube, and you put things on channel, you have to be careful, especially if people are monetizing, for example. You've got to be careful what you say and how you say it.
Yeah.
So there would be a time I'd like to be, but do you need to go into detail?
I never have.
Does it matter?
Never have. I've never given the details, because there's a point where it's not really, no one needs to know.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Because it's one of those things that, first of all, when you start to give details, you're almost giving everything of who you are. There's no privacy left. And I like to have some level of privacy, even though I've been authentic and vulnerable and all those things. As a therapist, I feel like I must have some privacy, because otherwise it's too much. And equally, I think that what we're doing when we're opening up and we're being authentic is we're giving enough that somebody else understands that it's safe for them to do that too, so that they can be open and honest in the way that helps them to repair their own life, whether it is telling someone, or whether it is just the bit, like you said, afterwards when you have told someone and actually now you've got the anger and the rage and you don't know what to do with it. So hearing you say what you've said will definitely resonate with someone, and they will definitely go, do you know what, that's why I'm angry. And hearing someone like you say it with, you know, the openness that you've done that, and the bits that are important is, why would someone keep going back? Well, we know you had been groomed.
There's more to the story though, which people had questioned. So basically, the gang stuff is all happening.
Yeah.
I've been stabbed. So I'm going to float through the story quite quickly on that part. So, you know, the gang stuff had happened. Committing me crimes and stuff. And, you know, knife crime was quite prominent in my life. I was carrying knives. I was, you know, weapons, whatever else, revenge stuff. All this stuff was going on. It was the lifestyle, you know. And I was... my best friend died first. He died first. He got stabbed and died in my arms. So that was the first initial.
How old were you then?
15.
Oh my God.
But I was one for fighting, like I said. Like I was back turning. I was a scrapper now. I was fighting everyone. They used to call me ruthless. They used to call me Roofy. Was like the name when I was younger. I was Scotty as the nickname, and I'd fight anybody. It was like small man syndrome. I didn't care how big you were. I'd be having it. Like it didn't really matter. I had nothing to lose, to be honest. I wasn't scared of anything.
Yeah.
And then I had a fight with a lad. As a result of that fight, I ended up getting stabbed after a couple of weeks later. I got jumped by him and his mates again. It was part of the lifestyle. You know, is that a bit of karma, isn't it, really? But then, obviously, I've moved into a hostel. This is where the drug then started. But when it come down, like my uncle, so I hadn't seen him. He'd obviously been locked up he got 4 years, I think it were, 4 year, 3 months or something. And I was at this point before that had happened. After all this stuff had happened, and I was living with my uncle, ex-military, wore a green jacket. He was crackers himself. He was a bit of a drinker, but he was probably one of my best uncles I had. He's passed away now, bless him. But we was staying with him, and I got a job in a car wash with my cousin, who is my abuser's son.
Right.
And he knew about this, and we had a bit of a up and down relationship, me and Jay. And he never accepted the fact of me saying what I'd said about his dad. Still probably even to this day, to be honest with you. But it happened.
Yeah.
Mate.
Yeah.
And you know, we worked together. We worked at a car wash, you know, we was doing our thing. And then this one day I'd come back, and who was sat at the table? Him. And this is like what I said to you the other day, like what you said on that the clip that you'd put out the other day about you know, some people still have a relationship with said abusers, and you know, and it's like, well, why the fuck are you doing that?
Yeah.
And that was the scenario. And you know, my uncle, it was his brother, and obviously my cousin still had a relationship with his dad.
Yes.
You know, that part of my story wasn't believed by certain people, which again was confusing for me.
Yeah.
You know, like why wouldn't you believe? Why am I just going to sit there and say this stuff that had happened if it ain't happened? It don't make no sense, does it? What am I gaining from that?
Yeah, no child does that.
You know, I'm not going to benefit anything from that. What am I going to get a new basketball for lying or something?
Yeah.
Like, it don't make no sense.
No.
And he was sat at the table, and I've like obviously like literally gone mad. So I'm 16 by this point, like, you know, so it's just like what, like. It was a big shock to see him for the first time, sitting there with his smarmy little fucking scarred lip face, and like just sat there at the table smoking weed like nothing had happened. Do you know what I mean? All that shit I've just gone through for all them years.
What you to do that and to just turn up when you know what you've done to this child, and sit there like nothing's happened.
Denied it till the day he died. It's even to the day he died, he's never admitted it. And I'm telling you, this is what happened, right? So he had admitted it. So I managed to swing it out of him. I basically fucking manipulated him in the end. And so my criminality started, and we're getting to like 17 and a half or something now. And I got my first sentence and gone to prison, Glenparva. I needed somewhere to stay to get tag. So where am I going to get tag? I ain't got no family. Well, I have, but the guy's a prick and he abused me. Fuck it, I need to get out. So I got tag at his address. I'm now older. He ain't coming near me. I'll smash him in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can look after myself now. That ain't happening. And other people used to think that was weird. Why are you getting tagged at his address? And he's done all that to you as a kid. So I said, all right, yeah, but that's cool. But I've also got him addicted to heroin and crack cocaine at the same time.
Yeah.
So now I'm using him in his house. He can use when I tell him he can use. So because I'm selling the stuff, I'm working with Jamaicans. So they're coming in and out of my house with shooters and whatever else in my house. So I was basically telling him when he can and can't have heroin. He was now under my control.
So you became the power.
Yeah. And I got him an addiction. That was probably the least of his worries, to be honest, but what could have happened to him.
Yeah.
And then he was later on by some people I won't name. He was run over by a car, run over again, lost his leg, loads of different things.
So, I mean, this was his punishment. Prison was probably no punishment, let's be honest.
Nah, there was nothing to that.
This was his punishment.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it went from then on. It was just,
he created the monster that then, took over his life.
Him, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did haunt him.
Yeah. And this is what, this is interesting because it's almost like a film, isn't it? Like you can almost see this. And I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm saying you couldn't write this stuff, really. Although I've just said it could be a film, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I feel like I am reading a book or watching a film here. Like the boy that's abused, he gets into the gang life because he's angry and this is a place to belong. And rightly or wrongly, you've done things within that time that, I say rightly or wrongly because actually I'm still thinking of the escapism and the way that you were trying to self-soothe. And then the person that's abused becomes the person that is really a perpetrator in a way, in the sense that you're manipulating him, coercing him, and then these people are driving over him and he loses his leg and whatever. And at this point you're still not even 21.
No,
you're still a teenager.
Yeah.
And you're going, this life is really dark. And are you heavily addicted at the time too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're deep in the addiction.
I'd got addicted by 16 in the hostel. So this was obviously beforehand. I'd moved. I'd been out of my house just under 16. My parents had broken up, so I was basically offending for myself from that age.
Yeah.
So I had to grow up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
To say grow up, I still probably weren't even mature enough.
Well, no, I mean, I moved out around the same age,
Yeah.
and you're definitely not grown up at that age.
Way.
You're just surviving.
Yeah, and I was in and out of hostels but then again, I was taking drugs, and it took about a year before it took effect. I enjoyed it at the time. It was fucking wonderful.
Yeah, well, again, you were a kid. Yeah, of course you do.
Taking these drugs in hostels can do what the fuck I want. You know, and I was getting buzzed out. Like heroin was probably one of the best things I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah.
At that point, obviously you're unaware of the consequences of when you're taking it. You don't know that there's going to be some after effects of that and the withdrawal symptoms and stuff. You don't know that until the withdrawals start.
Yeah.
Then like, what the fuck? Like this is a little bit much. Like,
well, that's what hooks you into the addiction, isn't it? Trying to avoid the withdrawals.
Exactly. But it was just the point of, I'd found something. Like cannabis wasn't really doing that for me at that point. I wasn't really interested. So
well, once you're on heroin, I doubt very much cannabis has the same.
I didn't even drink alcohol at that point because I didn't believe on doing two different things at the same time.
Yeah.
Stick with one.
Yeah.
Heroin was the choice.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until probably about 4 months in that I started to, if I hadn't used for a day or so, I'd be getting withdrawal symptoms. I'd felt a little bit shivery and runny nose, and I had a bit of a headache and felt
like a flu-y.
Felt sick, yeah. And I didn't, it wasn't that serious at that point, and I was coping with it. That was all right. It was a bit of withdrawal, and then I'd use again, and then I'd feel better. So then that's how I knew that that was what people used to say cold turkey.
Yeah.
So I knew I was addicted at that point because I was feeling that, and then I thought, I can't be feeling like that anymore. So I was then continually making sure that I had gear around me at all times, however I had to get that stuff, I was getting it. Whether I'd be robbing people or what, I'd be getting that. And then that's how it escalated, and it just got completely out of hand. From then on, there was no going back then. I
mean, Jesus Christ is all I can say.
It's a lot to take in, ain't it?
Yeah.
Even Jesus don't know about it, to be honest with you.
Sorry to blaspheme everybody, but wow.
Yeah.
Like the levels of experience there. But just to say as well, like if anyone's going to understand what kids are going through, it's definitely going to be you. So not only are you doing the best work in the world right now, and you are, like you really get it. And I've always said this. I've mentioned it on a different podcast. One of the reasons that I started to tell my story to my clients, if I felt it was benefiting them,
That's what I say all the time.
all the
Yeah,
time,
you do, don't
Don't I?
it does benefit them because they're telling you a story and they're like telling you bits of it, and you can see that they're unsure as to whether it's okay to say something. You can see that they're unsure as to whether it's safe to say something, and especially when it came to things like, you know, I drank heavily and I never even knew at the time that I had a problem, but I was falling asleep in my own sick regularly. So, you know, sick in your hair and not caring is a problem.
Yeah.
And it was every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was living a life that was not safe at all. And all those things that I thought, again, a bit like you, this is just normal. There's nothing weird about this. I don't understand. Didn't even consider to me that I never considered, that anybody would think it was weird or that think it wasn't normal, because it was normal to me. I was still a kid.
Yeah.
And then all these things that people were telling me, I was like, oh, I just need to share with you that if it's safe to do so, I need to tell you something. Like I've been there, done that, and you're going to be okay. And that's the very short version of it. But then they would say, oh, you get me, so I can trust you.
Oh.
Whereas, like you said about your behavioural therapist and the therapy that I had, I was never going to tell them anything, because they were gaslighting me in the same way you've been gaslighted, but they were making me feel like I was the problem, and I was trying to find out, can you help me with the problem that I actually have, which
Not
is
give
how
you
I
another
felt.
one.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you went through. They would accuse me of things and make insinuations and assumptions, and they weren't nice. They were cold and angry and all of those things. And that is a problem. If a child is vulnerable, even if they appear to be like, at 16 I was not looking 16 and, you know, behaving in a certain way, they're still a child. You still understand that they haven't fully developed yet. You still understand they've been through something. Why are you being an arsehole? I don't care. People go, oh, it's that generation. No, they were arseholes. It's that simple.
When you put it like that, I think I've met a few of them.
Exactly. And it's still happening today with the social services. Not all of them, obviously, but these, they're just arseholes.
Yeah.
It's not about a generational thing. If you're an arsehole, you're an arsehole. End of. And unfortunately, it seems like we've all come across them.
Yeah.
Which can make it worse.
Yeah. You know, it's just... there's just so much to move forward. You've got to get to a point in your life, like we got to that point, didn't we? And I got to that point, and it was just like, when's enough's enough?
Yeah,
like,
very good question.
How long can you avoid
the problem?
Yeah,
you know, and I avoided it for a long time.
Yeah,
but as a result, always questioning, why do I keep going back? Like, because I'd try, and then I'd lapse, and then I'd try, and then I'd relapse. And then I'd try, and then I'd lapse again, you know. And why do I keep going back?
Because you weren't ready to face the shadow.
No, and I think when that happened between me and Karla, obviously she gave me, like, you know, that 3 months that I was, you know, out of the house, and that was just my free reign to just crack on and, you know, get it out of the system, as you say, didn't you?
Yeah.
And that was, it had to be my rock bottom.
I think what it was as well is that once he'd got that addiction, during that time that I was trying to stop him, it wasn't him trying to stop himself. It was him trying to stop for my benefit. It was him. It was me trying to stop him. The more I was trying to, the more he was trying to hide it from me. Still doing it, but trying to hide it from me. So it was just like this revolving circle. Whereas as soon as it was right, now you're losing. In some ways, I was enabling it to carry on because I was still with him. I felt like I could save him. And in the end, I thought, I can't save him. You know, I'm going through a lot of stuff that is making me ill now. I'm taking on all this stress, and now I'm not in a good place. Who's going to look after the kids? So eventually enough was enough. And and then he went and got it out of his system for 3 months. And then after that, it was like the turning realization point, wasn't it?
Yeah. I woke, it was funny, like, we'll talk about this now, but it was like the morning that I woke up. I woke up this one morning. Now, this place was crackers where I were. And obviously, we've all got our own issues anyway. Like, nothing, I can't take anything away from them. They also had their own issues, you know what I mean? But I was in this madhouse, and this poor lady, and again, it was all coercive in that house anyway. Everyone was an addict in there. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And but yeah, she like I'd sleep. I was sleeping on this floor, and this woman had an issue with crack, and they call it they call the name of, like, they call it chicken picking, and if you've had a bit of crack, and then once you've had it, you're like looking around on the floor and picking up things, thinking you've dropped bits of crack on the floor, just crazy stuff. And she was doing that, and she was doing it at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd be fast asleep, and I could feel something tickling my nose and that, and it'd be like her hair, and I'd be laying there, and I'd had the cover, and I'd open my eyes, she'd be like, "Hi."
Oh my God,
And I'm like, "What are you doing?" I won't say her name, but I'm like, "What are you doing?" Let's just call her Jo or something. "What are you doing, Jo?" And she's like, "Well, I'm sure I dropped a bit of crack down here, boy. Don't mind me, but I'll find it." But it weren't. It was like cat litter and stuff, and it was just like crazy. And I just thought, "Oh, I can't do this anymore."
No, I mean,
This
that is rock bottom.
So this one morning, I woke up, and I felt like shit anyway. I was withdrawing that day, and then there was a little knock on the window. And obviously we're all paranoid. Who's that?
Yeah.
Who's at the window? So I've opened it, and it was this lady, this Scottish woman that we know. And she's actually always, she's got her own problems herself, and she bless her. But
she's an addict, but she's a functioning addict. But
she's
it's sad. It's very
sad.
She's a lovely
human, person,
it's
but it's just sad. She's in the madness.
Can't get away from it.
And she knocked on the window. Yeah. And she's like, "Someone's there to see you." And I'm thinking, "Who the fuck's that? Like, who's coming in to see me?" Like, I said, "Who?" She was like, "Just come up there and just find out." And I was thinking, "Who the bloody hell is she talking about?" So I've gone up there, and who's there? Boom.
No way.
Yeah. So what had happened? It was my son's, because it was his first day at nursery. So it was the first day that I didn't have him, and I dropped him off to nursery, and I sat there and I thought, I couldn't stop throughout the whole time that he wasn't there. I couldn't stop thinking about him anyway. And I kept thinking in my head, I wonder if he's died. I really felt like he'd died.
Oh,
God. It gives me a lump in my throat talking about
Oh, bless you.
I thought it was going to be you then.
Oh, no, I didn't prepare for this.
He was behind there earlier.
We need that. Oh, bless.
I'm all right.
If you want a tissue, I'll go and get you one.
I'm all right.
I'm just
So I
worried
went to
about your
find
makeup.
So I was driving back down the hill, and I always looked out for him in town and stuff. But obviously, whenever I had the kids, I would never have stopped or anything. And so I dropped him off to nursery, and then I was driving through town, and I saw this lady that we both know, and I said to her, I pulled up, and I said to her, like, "Come over." And I said, I got her to get in the car, and I said, "Is he still alive? Have you heard from him? Do you know if he's still okay? Like, has he killed himself? Like, what's the situation?" She said, "I'll show you where he is. I'll show you where he's living." So I thought, all right, well, at least if I know where he's living as well, it made me feel better, knowing that he's in a house, knowing that he's alive. So we drove round, she showed me where he was living, and we drove past, and I went round to like the next road. And she went to me, "Shall I go and get him?" And I thought, oh God, I don't know.
This was a choice now.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. Like, no, but yeah, maybe. Don't know. Like, everything was going through my head.
Were you scared?
Not really. I wasn't really scared. No, it was more the fact that I don't really know. It was such a messy mix of emotions, really. And it was like I hadn't really been given that option for all that time. I'd just shut the door and kind of, I'd got the kids, and this was the first occasion that I didn't have the kids. So it was a bit, so I said, all right, go and get him. And I thought, if he's, I'll be able to tell by the look on his face. If he's on anything, I'll just drive off. It'll be fine. I won't let him in the car. I'll just look at him out the window. So that's what she did. She went and got him, and he come up to the car window. And that was the first time I'd seen him in 3 months.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Awful.
That
it was
first.
Awful.
I was fucked.
Not at the time. He wasn't on anything at the time.
Meaning like I looked a mess.
Yeah.
He was skinny.
I'd lost loads of weight, obviously.
Yeah. It was completely like, it was quite, I think it was quite warm that day, and he was covered in, he had a coat zipped all the way up, and just
a shitty Ralph Lauren
just
coat,
looked
like I used to live in. Like,
Yeah.
help me.
It just looked really bad.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to you, like, "Are you going to go to court? All these injunctions that I've got the non-molestation order, I've got the child arrangements order. Court is tomorrow." I think it was the next day, weren't it? "Are you going to go to court, like, to try and get access to the kids? Are you going to try and talk to anybody?" Anyway, he didn't realise. Had you had the paperwork?
No, I didn't even know it was court.
So
Didn't even know.
he didn't realise anyway. He said to me, like, I'm in a bit of a bad way, and I picked him up and I went and got him some food.
Yeah.
Wow.
Went and got him some food, and I said to him, I just had a talk really, and I said to him, look, you've got to. I remember him saying to me, I just don't want to do this anymore. I've had enough. I'm at the end of my tether, and I thought, I've heard all this before.
Yeah.
You know, I want to believe what you're saying, but I don't believe what you're saying. So I just said to him, well, you know, it's down to you. You've got to do it on your own. You've got to try and get yourself sorted out. And if you do, you do. I hope that you do. The kids really miss you. And I remember showing him a video of Tyler and him getting upset. I remember you crying. Yeah, it was bad, but we had a bit of a conversation. I dropped him back off. And that night you didn't go back, did you?
Nah.
Slept in a park.
Yeah, I slept in a park on a slide. Instead of
Wow.
going back to that house that I was at.
You chose to sleep somewhere else.
Yeah. I'd lost all desire for it. It wasn't fun anymore.
No.
You know, you can go through times where you're having fun, and you know, I had my blowout. That was it. And at that point, you know, I'd lost everything anyway.
Yeah.
So how am I going to get that back? So it's, you know, this is the kind of thing that I always say to people as well. And I was saying this in the car on the way up. There's like 3 elements for me, and that's acceptance, change, and responsibility.
Yep.
And they was the 3 key points for me.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one that can change it.
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And I have to accept every bad thing that's
Yes,
ever happened
you do,
and
yeah.
everything that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it was a slow process of doing that.
Yeah.
But I started that process off that first day that I saw her again. So it was, you know, there was more. I was affecting more people in my life rather than what I were before.
Yeah.
So I had kids and stuff. And, you know, it wasn't even just so much even for the fact we had Tyler. He besotted with me anyway at that point. But I had another 2 kids as well. I was being really irresponsible, and everything that I'd done to Karla and the stuff that I'd put her throughout that period as well. It's just like, really, you know.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, you'll know this as well as I do. Many people go through what you two go through and never come back from it. And that's because the person, i.e. you, never gets better.
No.
So what makes you two different?
Well, so from that moment going forward, you know, if you want something so bad, you've got to fight for it.
Yeah.
And you know,
but what makes you a fighter in that way? Because I know you've been a fighter, but I'm butting in there for a reason, because what you're about to say is, I know what you're going to say. You got to fight for it and do the work and all that. But some people never do. They really don't feel like they can. So what is it about you two that together you've been able to find that spot, that little bit of magic that not only made you push through as a couple, as a family, but has enabled you to turn this into something really important. I was going to say amazing then, but that's not the right word. What you do for a living is really important. What you're doing with Project Youth and the bleed boxes and all of that is really important. So I know that's a difficult question. You may not even know the answer.
Maybe we're just a power couple.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, no, and everybody does say we're a power couple.
Yeah.
People on TikTok say we're a power couple. We're the best couple on TikTok and stuff like that. We get that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and the reason why I like to be like that, because I don't want it to be all doom and gloom.
No.
And like, you know, there's times in life for us to be serious, and there's times in life that we can have fun, and there's times in life that we can still have fun out of the seriousness.
Well, laughter's the best medicine.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't want everything to be so serious, but at the same time, when we're dealing with other people's issues, you know, if somebody messages us privately, that's serious.
It is
that's
serious.
a serious time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then we can make light of the moment when we've been speaking with this person for however long, and we get to know them a bit better, and you know how we carry ourselves anyway. That's just us.
Yeah.
Like
you are unique.
Yeah. And we will sit there, won't we? And we will have these conversations. We'll talk about ourselves, and then we'll just crack a joke.
Yeah.
And then we have people in stitches, and some of the stuff that we come out with on there, we have people fucking laughing their heads off.
It's a bit of therapy, ain't it?
Yeah,
laughing
of course.
together and just.
You've got to enjoy it, in your.
I think also it's really odd because all of the stuff that I went through, I feel like I did try, and I did do some trauma-based therapy, and it didn't work for me. It was, maybe I didn't give it long enough, but I didn't feel like it was helpful. If anything, it felt very unhelpful. But one of the things, I was stuck in this rut for a while afterwards, and it was almost like it comes down to a responsibility thing, because the person that I wanted to talk to about it, oddly, was him.
Yes.
But every time I approached the subject, he'd clam up, and I'd get annoyed that he wouldn't listen to me. But I felt like, I know now, because now we've further down the line, we've had so much communication, which was a bit of a barrier, and it was the guilt that he felt, which is why he was blocking it off. But I felt like, you know, however much guilt you feel about what I'm feeling, it was like what I was feeling was being disregarded. I just wanted him to know sort of like what I'd been through, and then to take the responsibility, and then to understand maybe some of the problems that I'd got as a result of some of the stuff. Not saying everything was a result of him, because I'd been through domestic incidents prior to even meeting him.
Yeah.
However, I felt like this was worse, and I almost wanted him to listen, but the more I wanted him to listen, the less he wanted to listen. It became a barrier for a while, and it affected our relationship. But somehow we managed to just turn it all around. We actually did.
I think what it worked, because I was, so there has been key point, you know, we're like, and she said this before as well, like it's the fact that like I was at that point now of like, I'm sorted out, I'm okay now.
Yeah, I'm done. So we don't need to go there.
But she wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So
I'd been putting it all on hold.
And she put a lot of work into me to be okay.
Yeah.
So whilst I was going through what I was going through 7 years ago to be in the position that we are today, she was still the one that was helping me be in that position.
And guilt and shame will put people into block mode. You know, I feel ashamed, I feel guilty, I feel like the scum of the earth, and I'm trying to get better here, so I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
And you're going, yeah, but I'm hurt.
Yeah, and he used to say to me, I remember this phrase, and it used to hurt when he said it. He used to say to me, why are you so stuck in the past? Like, stop being stuck in the past, stop talking about the past, we're going forward. Why are you still stuck in the past? And it used to...
What he was saying was, please don't put me in the past.
Exactly.
That's what he was really saying.
And I struggled with that, because I felt like he doesn't want to hear it. It's nothing to do with me is relevant. It's always got to be about him. The amount of stuff that I've put, like, sort of, one of the hard things, once he then, you know, he started to recover from taking drugs and he wasn't taking them anymore, was that he volunteered down the drug and alcohol service. And I wanted him to do that, because I wanted him have a sense of purpose, and I knew it was important for that. But at the same time, he's now going to be leaving the house and going down to a place where he could easily see people that are potentially carrying drugs.
Yeah.
You know, there could be people outside the house, outside of the place, that, you know, these people are all struggling themselves. Is it good for him to be down there with other people that are... But obviously it worked out for the good, and I had to put trust in him.
You had to go through that anxiety.
Yeah, so again, all of these feelings that I've got are all pushed to the back, because I wanted him to get better. You know, it was important for him to be okay. It was important. I felt like I had to just be the strong one, and I've always felt like I had to be the strong one. And then once he was okay, it was like, I'm not the strong one anymore. I need you to be the strong one.
Yeah.
Well, it was obviously difficult for him. He'd moved forward with his life. He just wanted to forget about this time, and like you said, it's that guilt and shame. And
well, how did you become the rescuer in the first place?
I honestly don't know.
Because you said that right early on, and it's obviously been a theme in your life where there's been broken people that you've been attracted to, and you've wanted to help them, and you've wanted to fix them. And each time they've obviously been in the serious relationships quite damaged. And obviously with Karl, it's really worked out beautifully, and perhaps that's because of you as well as because of him. Because
you've too much praise.
Well, no, because you held a safe space for him, because you went back to see if he was okay, and because you reminded him of court, and because, you know, he didn't have the capacity, and no one had actually looked after you like that before.
No.
And sometimes when we go, look at this person, how they've recovered, and I've been this person, that we're not looking at the network around them of, might only be one or two people that have actually said, I love you no matter what.
Yeah.
Even though you're hurting me, I love you no matter what. And that has enabled that person to see themselves in a different mirror. And I think you gave Karl a different mirror to see himself in. And it enabled him to do the work that he's done. And I don't want to take that power away from you, because you did the work.
I'll take it. Give it to me.
I actually look quite good looking in that mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal reflection.
Well, the mirror would be there if I weren't holding it up.
And I think another point of it as well, this time, like, instead of it being like a one-sided band where it's just one person putting in work in, like, we're both actually
doing it.
Yeah,
doing
we work
it
better
together
than we do separately, I think.
Because you need to be yourself, which is partly the nurturer and the fixer, and you need to be the person that has that lived experience.
Yeah.
of all those different multifaceted experiences you've had to drive the thing forward. But were you one of these kids that were always like playing with the dolls and wanted to be the mum? What happened?
I was actually. I always wanted to have loads of kids as well. It's funny you say that. I had loads of dolls. My mum would tell you I always had loads of dolls. I don't know where it comes from.
You were just you were a natural born nurturer.
Maybe.
And that's what made you go into the rescuing.
A natural born nurturer. That sounds better.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. I think you are. I think because we use labels like rescuer and people pleaser and all those things and fixer.
That's what all the social services said.
Yeah. And I just think you were a natural born nurturer who fell in love and I think you knew I can help someone and I want to help someone. And for some reason, the nurturer in you has been able to pull out the best version of you. And that's where you say we work best together. And sometimes, of course, being the nurturer means that you're more likely to fall for people that need nurturing.
Yeah.
And those people may well hurt you. But you're going to get hurt in life one way or another. And I always say to people, because the trauma work I would do with people would be to say, look, let's stop using things like rescuer and fixer and let's look at the nurturing part of your personality, because we've all got different parts of us. And sometimes if your nurturer is abused by someone, then that can become a problem for you, of course. But we mustn't lose the nurturer and shut it down and block it off.
Yeah, especially like you say, if it's part of your personality. How
It
can
is.
you not be like that?
Exactly. So not making someone feel ashamed that they're somebody that will nurture and will want to fix. And I think it's a beautiful quality and we need it in society. We do, don't we? And look at what you've done together as a result of your power, your nurture, and that power together, and the power that you've got to be a survivor too, because you've survived. And there's that is where the power couple thing comes from, I think.
But I wouldn't have done it if she wouldn't have come to sent that woman to the door.
No, I know
that day.
That's what I'm saying. Look, I don't want to get all spiritual here, but there are key moments in life that just align beautifully for what's going to happen next, and you can't deny those moments. You seeing that woman. Look, just think about the sliding doors scenario here. That you didn't see her in that moment.
And I hadn't seen her for the same amount of time I hadn't seen him.
Exactly.
So weird.
Exactly. In that moment, you saw that woman who knew where he was, that took you to him, and you had that conversation that changed the course of the future. To me,
it's nuts.
It's nuts, yeah. Like those moments, we just take them for granted. We don't actually go, hang on, WTF? Sorry to be cheeseball, but that is pretty phenomenal, that moment there. And I say to people, never ignore the moments.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because it is quite that
it is true. And I think and out of that, like, you know, we went against everything.
Yes.
And you know, that people would thought that, I mean, we've had our issues. We broke up a couple of times in our relationship, but you know, each time we've been in a position, we've come out stronger.
Yeah.
And then from where people have always put that down, and you know, they've had some negative stuff about the relationship, like at the end of the day, we managed, we went against that. We've had another baby girl.
Yeah.
You know, we've had our Madison, and haven't we?
Yeah.
And then we've moved into a different house, and you know, all the positions that we're in now is mental.
And I just think what you've got is you bring everything to the table. You just in this episode, there's been laughter, there's been tears, there's been moments of realization. Even for me, just listening, going, you know, I like it when you remind me of the special moments in life as well. As I'm saying that to you about that woman in that moment, it's reminded me of how special each moment is as well. And that you're just bringing all of that by being yourselves, by being genuinely, authentically, truthfully yourselves.
And I think that's how, when we started social media, that is what we said we will do.
Yeah.
Didn't have anything special to give, just that all we was going to
well,
do
this is the special.
Yeah, we're just Karl and Karla. Or two's a duo, you know, that's us, and you know, if people, there's nothing people can say, like we don't, what you see is what you get, and we have real stories, proven real stories.
We just wanted to help other people,
and we want to, because we know so many other people have been through exactly the same stuff. Unfortunately, some people haven't made it through.
That's what I was saying earlier.
But there's still others out there that we speak to. We get many messages from people, and the comments that we get on some of our stuff it's phenomenal, isn't it? And and there's a lot of people that do relate, and there's people that message us and they'll say, mate, or like, both of you, thank you for that video that you put out the other day, or thank you for that video that you put out 4 weeks ago. I'm now 4 weeks clean.
And you know what that is? Them moments are so rewarding.
Yeah.
We read them to each other, don't we? Like, we'll read it out and we'll be like, oh my God, like, listen to this message.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those messages. And what I was about to say is that you two are actually, and this, I don't want to like give you the superhero complex here, but we know from doing the work that we do through our social medias that when we say something, when we tell a little element of the story, there will be a certain amount of DMs. And for me, it's usually DMs because I talk about really trauma and sexual abuse. And most people don't want to reveal that on a public forum, but I'll get a certain amount of DMs. And the stories that I've heard have been, people have trusted me to share them as they do with you. You just realise this is actually really important. And particularly with the subject matters, the young people, it's the sliding doors again.
Yeah.
If you don't turn up at that school on that day and resonate with that child, if you didn't see that woman on that day and turn up at that building where you were and have that conversation, life would be entirely different.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to think that.
It really is. And because of what you went through, and because of what you've gone through, there are now kids already that will not end up dead.
There's kids now. We still talk to some of the youths that I've worked with in past work. We have kids coming up to us when we're doing our shopping.
Yeah.
And oh sir, like, you need to come back to the school. It's shit without you here. And that's while we're with my kids doing an Aldi shop.
That's phenomenal,
and and then there's a couple of young people that I've worked with when I was doing the other role, and that some of them have actually came across to our bleed control training, didn't they, and sat with us within that. And this is like 3.5 years afterwards.
And they're getting really positive outcomes.
Positive outcomes in their life. They're working, and we have them on our social medias as well. And I talk to them, and that's the thing where, our social media isn't massive. And it's not so much about, oh great, I've got 100,000 followers.
Who needs 100,000 followers when you're not doing anything with it?
And this is what I say to quite a few people. And there's a lot of people that let this stuff go to their heads.
Yeah.
And like, what's the point? We've got, let's say we've got 700 followers, for example, on Instagram. Now, the amount of people that we've got is positive.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about the quantity, it's the quality of what you got.
Yes.
And the quality of what we've got is massive.
Yes.
And we get engagement off most of them.
Yeah.
We have really good positive feedback for them.
Yeah.
We speak with these people on a positive matter. Having 100,000 people on my Instagram, how the hell am I going to keep up with that?
Well, you can't. It becomes a very big problem, actually, especially when you're doing the work that you're doing.
Exactly.
And I think for you, you've got your TikTok, which is like 26,000. And then you've got your Instagram, and then you've got your LinkedIn. And we were saying earlier, weren't we, before we started to record, I will be up, and this is a genuine, and you might even see how late I post. I am up at midnight doing my social media because it's the only time I get to do it.
It's so hard to manage.
It's hard to, and I had someone managing it for me a while ago.
You can schedule your posts. Yeah,
I know you can schedule your posts, but you see, this is where the part of my brain that should be organised is not organised. So it's just a lack of organisation. It's something I'm working on. You're exposing the scattiness of my life. I will be better organised, I promised.
We want to see those schedules. You have to send a screenshot. I want to see at least.
Do you know how to schedule on
I do.
Instagram?
Social Bee apparently is a wonderful tool as well for scheduling
you
across.
can do it actually through Instagram.
I know, because there's a place that you can do it on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's
Do you know what? I found this a couple of days ago.
Did you really? Well, I've known about it for a long time, so I've got even less of an excuse.
Cheers for telling me.
It's literally, yeah, I should have shared that with you. But that's because my brain doesn't work with an organised. There are some bits that are extremely organised, but because that bit's organised, the rest of it isn't. So I keep saying this to people about many different aspects of what I'm doing from a professional point of view. Next year is my year for getting all my eggs in the same basket, neatly lined up, no excuses. I've said it now. Publicly.
We're going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
And when you say next year, there's actually not that many months
I
left
know,
of
which
this year.
is just really quite scary.
Oh yeah, what we're talking January
You
here?
can do this.
No.
You can do this.
I can do this, and I've
You
said
will
it
do
publicly.
it.
I will. And you'll see that the post will no longer go out at gone midnight, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning.
Unless they're scheduled to.
Unless they're scheduled to, which actually I might do because it's
You're
some
best
people,
off scheduling your posts to be out early evening between 8 and 9 o'clock.
everyone keeps telling me this,
You've got to
and I
look at your
will.
analytics.
And at the weekends is pointless doing your daytime scheduling. You may leave everything at the weekend to the evening.
Everyone keeps telling me that, and I just ignore it. So I'm not going to ignore it anymore because you hear the same message enough times, and you have to.
Well,
take
I always
action.
use the word: if 3 people call you a horse, you need to buy a saddle.
Yes. Wow, that is. Where did that come from? The 1940s.
God knows.
I heard that from my granddad.
Exactly.
Probably the
So,
Yeah.
you know, if 3 people call you a horse, and what do I mean? Why are people going to call me a horse? Like, and it was like, you'll understand. It's like, you know, that is basically saying, like, you know, if more than 3 people say the same thing,
You
then
gotta do
something's
it.
coming from it. You
Yeah.
know? And
Listen.
and listen to it. So I always go by that. So it's one of them things. And that's
Look,
how
look,
we
they've
kinda
had a
do
social media lesson. I mean, you bring it
I
all.
know.
You've had a
Oh,
social media
stop.
lesson.
Singing our
It's the
praises,
thing
you
is,
are.
like, social media changes all the time. And
It
like,
does,
you know,
I know.
I mean, admittedly, I am the social media boffin, and I do the sitting and the posting. Like Karla,
You should have another account called the Social Media Boffin.
Oh, I should do, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I should make a feeling.
Yeah.
But Karla, like, there's certain things that I can't do, and I'm like, baby, you need to do this. Like, you know, and she's good
That's
at
where I come in.
Yeah, and she does this editing.
It's
thing.
normally
She's bloody
looking
brilliant.
after the kids.
Yeah. But I'll always make sure I have to have a post on for early morning.
Yeah,
So, like, let's say between quarter to 7 and 7:30 in the morning.
before people have gone to work and
So
all that
yeah,
jazz.
that'll be the post.
When
And
you
then-
wake up and you just can't be bothered to do
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
as well. It's that
and
morning.
then I'll do an evening post, which will be anywhere between 8 and 10
Yeah,
at night. But what I'm noticing is you just got to be really careful because their algorithms are changing
All the time.
all the time, and especially TikTok. Now you never know whether you're coming or going with TikTok.
I can't get my head around it.
So TikTok, it'll either work
Oh,
from
blimey.
what you see on the screen,
Yeah,
or it'll be what you see in your description.
yes.
So that is how it works, and it's give or take what day that's on. So one day it could be in your description, and it will work out your keywords to put into the search bar,
Yeah.
and then tomorrow it will be what you see on the screen.
Well, it's funny
So-
because just to let everyone know, I mean, Karla's sharing this with us now, but you also kindly inboxed me
Yeah.
to say, look, I've been looking at your TikTok, do this, do that. You are just a giver. You're really kind like that because most people just be like, oh, well, sodder. But you obviously noticed that the engagement on my TikTok is very low comparatively
And I think
to Instagram.
and it needs to be higher because
Yeah.
what you're talking about is relevant to people. And I think the
Yeah.
more people you can get that in front of, the
Yeah.
more people are going to relate to it,
It's
and the
so
more people you're
important.
going to help by listening,
Yeah.
where they're listening to it. And then when I've looked at your TikTok and
Yeah.
I'm seeing that, like, the views, and obviously certain key points are hashtags,
Yeah.
and especially with TikTok where you've got FYPs and
Yes, you were the one that said that. That's right.
and For You page is what you're
Yeah.
scrolling through.
Yes.
So hashtagging For You page is scrolling.
Yeah.
It's getting people scrolling, which
I
brings up the
wonder
views.
because I had some social media management, which I no longer have, but they were hashtagging things like sexual abuse and sexual assault, and I wonder if that's actually getting blocked sometimes because I suppose
It does do because there's key things you can't say stuff
Yeah.
about child and
Yeah.
children and
Yeah.
sex and stuff. So,
So
they
I
do
think
block
that's
this
probably
stuff
because
out.
I'm still doing that, and you just saying that now has made me think. I wonder because I just carried on what the pattern of what they'd done, but obviously it hadn't got much engagement on there. So I wonder if I need to change.
So
the
when you're doing
keywords
your
to
Maybe
hashtag.
hashtags,
try it.
are you looking
Try
at
it.
how many billions or millions have got next to it?
No,
Look,
if it's got too many, it won't get seen. Or if
no,
it's
it will.
oh, it will.
If it's got too less, it won't
Yeah.
get seen. So if you put therapist, hashtag therapist,
Yeah.
for example,
yeah,
and on hashtag therapist, it's got 250 million.
yeah,
But then you'll put therapy
Yeah.
above it, hashtag therapy, and it's got 522 billion.
yeah. Go with
Click
that
the
one.
therapy.
Because I do include those ones as well.
Yeah.
Now they weren't before, and I put those in. Still not doing much though. But
Give
that-
it time. It just takes that one day.
Time,
And we
yeah.
had one video, thankfully, our daughter.
It was, wasn't it, little Madison?
I mean, our TikTok, we'd still within a couple of months of building that from Boxing Day, we got it up to about, I think it was like 3,500, 4,000
yeah,
followers.
see, I'm struggling with that.
So, but then Karla had filmed. So Karla filmed a video with Madison, didn't you?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Oh, and then it was the one about her. Have you watched it?
I don't
It
think
was
I
one
have.
about her wanting my ring. She's so funny. Madison's just like, she's like a mixture of us together. Isn't
Oh
she?
my
She's
god,
so,
I bet she's amazing.
she's so comical. She's only 3, but she'd yeah,
Yesterday.
she's 4 now, but at the time she was only
Yeah.
3. And I think it had come about because my dad had passed away, and all of my so he had 3 rings, and all of my brothers got a ring each. And she must have heard a conversation about it. You know, it's like when you're talking amongst yourselves, and then they take things in. And a couple of days after that, no, it was a couple of weeks after that, I was sat down. She went to me, "Mummy, can I have your ring?" And I said, "What, this one?" And she went, "Yeah, can I have your ring?" And I went, "Well, not really, because that's my mummy's ring." And she went, "Can I have your ring when you die?"
I think I have seen that.
It's so funny. And it went viral.
It went viral.
Didn't it? It's on like 4.5.
6.4 million
6.4
views
million.
on that one
Oh no,
video.
I thought it was 4.6.
6.4 million.
6.4
Oh my
million.
God.
Just on that one video alone, and instantly within 4 days we had 10,000 followers just from that one video.
So it goes to show that it's sometimes just one.
Yeah,
It must have been posted at the right time with the right hashtags, and it was funny. And also, the more shares that a video gets, the more it's put in front of people, which makes it get seen quicker.
Yeah.
And then if it gets seen by loads of people within a short period of time, it then like just
explodes.
And
you just got to keep, and it's like with anything, that's probably been the one that's been hard for me. Facebook has always been fairly good, LinkedIn's been good, Instagram's been good, TikTok, which is the one you hear about the most now, is the one that I just couldn't crack the code of.
I just don't think we can do it all as well. I think sometimes you find one that you're better with, and I
said to you earlier, I thought all the Instagram followers would come over to TikTok, but actually a lot of them are Instagram people. They're not, because a lot of them are my age.
TikTok.
Well, this is what I was going to say. You know, I'm in my 40s. A lot of them don't even want to go on TikTok.
Well, they don't give it a chance.
They don't give it a chance. And if they are on TikTok, it's to watch what the kids are doing rather than actually care about TikTok. So I think that's the age group that follow me are, I would say, predominantly I don't want to say the word because it's making me cringe, middle-aged. I feel a bit sick, but that's the truth.
Funny.
Well, I'm 41. I'm middle-aged.
Well, I actually thought you were younger than that, so you could have got away with not revealing your age.
My Botox the other day.
I've had a lot of work done. But you know what? Shout her out. Yeah. I mean, I'd be here all day if I was shouting out all the people that have worked on this visage. We haven't got the time.
Well, they've done a good job.
Thank you very much. I'm 67. No, and I'm not really.
What was that, when death becomes her?
That's me. That's what I'm going to look like when I'm about 106. I'll be patched together with plasters.
Held up with a turtleneck.
It'd be cheaper, wouldn't it? Use a few band-aids. But you know, if that happens, you heard it here first, guys. But you know what? I mean, I've had a very wild ride today with you two. Like, there was, obviously, I said to you before we started, I don't want to know the story too much because I genuinely want to feel like I'm on the journey with the listeners. And I don't think I spoke a lot because I think there was so much that you were saying that I was literally, like I said, I felt like I was watching a film.
Aww.
But what I will say is you two are probably two of the most genuine, honest, open people I've ever met.
Aww.
You have literally been so open and so given so much, you know, especially with that story there and what you've experienced together as a couple and all the pain and everything. Very rare to find people that will be that honest. I mean, luckily on this podcast people have shared real stories, but yours is so dark in places, but you've been so honest about something that is generally quite difficult for people to talk about. And I know you didn't go into the details, but like I said to you earlier, I think that doesn't matter. I think the fact
I'll save that for my book.
Save it, save it for the money.
Any publicists out there or any ghostwriters, please get in touch.
Please do get in touch.
You can find me at hello@projectyouth.co.uk. We have spoken about that, haven't we? We have spoken about doing a book.
You definitely should.
But it's finding the time, and you know, there's so much to it with writing the books and stuff.
Well, as you know, I did one, and the things I didn't actually go into as much detail as what I probably would have done if I'd have done it now. I made it more about self-help in the end because that's my job. Right, to help people.
Yeah,
you could do another.
I could do another one. I could do another one, and I probably will because I shied away from sharing, which is funny because you know that's kind of what I do openly on things like Instagram.
Just weren't the time.
I don't think it was. I think I needed to get the first one done. You know, the first one is always the hardest.
Yeah, and
you learn from doing the first one.
Yeah,
and so I think. But what I'm saying to you is, I think everyone should write a book, especially you two. Like, there's so much there. And can you imagine how many books you would release with all the work that you do?
Right,
with
let's
people?
go.
Yeah.
Right, we've got something to do.
You have got something to do.
Waterstones, where are you? But it's like, I think because there is so much to it. There is like there's so much more. I could sit here for hours.
I know,
you
and I could as well. And
there's
we're
so
actually going to
much.
have dinner tonight, so that we
Yeah,
can.
We're going to
save
keep
some
going for a
more.
few
Yeah.
hours, aren't
Yeah.
we?
Let it
Hopefully,
roll.
we won't be talking about such dark subjects. We'll talk about the
No,
good
but
stuff.
you
While
know,
we're eating our
I think
steak.
to be honest,
Wiping off.
I was asked the question in London a couple of days. I did a talk in London, and again, I was scouted for that talk, and it was really, really big, good, beneficial talk, and
Yeah.
it was probably one of the most professional talks that
Yeah.
I've done, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
In front of some good, top-notch people. PJ, legend, if he watches, he's a really good lad, and ex-military, and he was so welcoming. Everybody that was there was welcoming, and one of the things, one of the people asked me was, it's about, what did they say? Is there anything that I would say
Yeah.
to my younger self?
If you could go back and change it, would you?
And if I could
there's-
change it, would you? And I said, no.
No.
And I said, the reason why is because I always say I sometimes, she tells me off.
Well, your story is yours.
We have taken like a massive positive from a negative
True.
throughout a lot of the stuff that we've done.
True.
But if I would say anything to my younger self, nah. The thing is, what I try and do now is my younger self are the kids I work with.
This is exactly what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
You're doing that with those kids.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to do that with those kids if you hadn't have had this experience.
No.
That's what you were put on this earth to do.
Yeah.
Is to heal others. And you
I'm
had
like
to.
Noah from Noah's Ark.
You are.
I'm leading them kids onto
When
a
I
boat.
saw you in the street, that's exactly what
Yeah.
I thought. There's Noah.
I thought you meant you're a Noah because you know it all now.
Oh.
That's what I thought. That's a really good way
but
of
the thing
putting
is,
it.
though, I don't know it all because I'm even. This is another thing I say. Like, even I say to young people, even 41, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
There's still things that I'm learning. Like, you could say
Like
something
picking
to
them
me
skidders
today that
up
I
off the floor.
That's what?
don't
Picking
even
them-
listen to.
I
Her.
said like picking them skidders up off the floor.
What skidders are these?
Joking.
Unbelievable.
Sorry, carry on.
Should we
Go
start
on.
talking
No.
about things?
All right, let's
No, that's
not.
what I thought.
Don't start exposing me.
But yeah, it's like, like a young person could say something and I've not even known about, and like I've just learned from him or her.
Yes.
You know,
Well, this is,
So
and you'll
it's-
never not learn.
No,
Because you'll always
every
meet.
day is a learning curve.
course
You
it
know,
is.
and still the fact is you could go in and do a workshop, and then you've still got to work out what worked and what didn't. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
again,
you
you're
will.
learning. You
Yeah.
know, so there's so many different elements to it, and this is the thing that that's why I'm grateful and thankful for everybody that's been on the journey with us, because there's been so many people that's come along the way, and we have so many good friends that we can call friends as well, that are
Yes.
really genuine
Yeah.
friends of ours. And obviously yourself has come along now, obviously,
Yeah.
and we've got there's a reason why these things happen and why
Yeah.
you meet so many people.
And people fall in love with you. And I'm talking about myself as well. Like the first time that we connected, it was through voice notes.
Yeah,
And I was literally
we
sitting
was on the
down.
way back from an event.
You were. And I was listening and I was literally laughing out loud. I was saying to
Oh.
myself, oh my God, I love these two.
Oh.
I think I even told you straight
Yeah.
away. Like within about 30 seconds, my heart had just gone boom, connected. Right, that's it. I need to know these people forever. And that's the effect that you have on people. You just have this real magnetic force. So you have got good friends. It's because people want to be with good people. And you
That's
are
how
good
we
people.
feel about you.
Yeah, and I think as well, we was with Danielle, when we were
Yeah.
talking with Danielle, she's
Danielle
a good friend
Mason.
of ours as well,
She
and
is.
and this is how this has come about as
Yeah.
well through her be coming on here, and
Yeah.
so we do have. I've got another good mate, Terry Dunnage. He's another good pal of mine,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you know who Terry is, but
I love
he's
it when you meet nice people.
yeah,
It's
no,
so
like
good.
and I did have I've had other good friends, and so sometimes people come and go along your journey,
They
and
do.
these things happen. I've never no animosity with people. I can't be
The
arsed.
right ones
you know.
always stay, though.
You
They
know,
do.
and it's just one of them. People come, people go, and and it's still whatever happens, and whoever comes and whoever goes, it still doesn't stop the journey.
It
Like,
doesn't. And it doesn't stop. I mean, the people that don't hang around for various different reasons. It may not be something you've done wrong, by the way. It might be because they move away and people move on. And I've had friends that I love dearly that I haven't seen for 20 years because they moved to another part of the world.
Yeah,
And you do just lose contact because life moves at such a
Yeah.
pace. Don't mean you don't love them, and it doesn't mean that you didn't have a profound effect on them and vice versa, and that you became a better person because of them. And that in that way, we've got lots of little soulmates. And even for you doing the work that you're doing now, you'll work with a kid for 6 months, maybe, even 12 months sometimes. And this happens to me all the time, because I've done this job for 20 years. 20 years later, someone will send you a message or see you on social media, and they'll go, "Oh my God, do you remember me? If it wasn't for you, and I always say, no, if it wasn't for you." But then the thing is that you've had an effect on someone, and they've had an effect on you. And isn't that what it's all about? Just it's those moments that can be not always life-changing, but profound or funny, or just do something to you that changes the course of events. And that's what you do.
And we enjoy it. We enjoy everything we do. And there's nothing we're not even in this for gain of anything. This is just something we enjoy.
You just found that thing in life. When you just find that purpose, you just feel and it just feels nice.
We enjoy it. We enjoy making people happy. We enjoy being happy of other people being happy. And we get to run a youth project. We get to go on numerous television shows.
Which is so cool.
And all this stuff, obviously, don't people get it twisted? This doesn't even involve any cost. There's no money that's made from it. We're doing this because we want to.
But you know what I said to you earlier off camera, and I mean it. As soon as I get the time, I'm going to share with you how you can actually, because I believe that good people deserve good rewards, and that's not just the way it fills your heart. I mean, like you say, you've been doing this and slogging it out, and there is no money in it, but there are ways that I can help lots of different people, not just you, but I mean you directly today. Start to look at how you can make money, not from the charity, not from the kids themselves, but just as people that deserve to have the life that you give so much. You deserve to have the best life ever. And there's nothing wrong with that. People think it's really embarrassing or vulgar or wrong to want money, but actually when you've come from nothing, money allows you to remarket your business in a way that more people get access. To widen that net of people like you, to train people like you, to see, you might see, let's say, I don't know, little Jimmy who's got a lot of problems in a school. 5 years later, he could be one of your coaches going out working for you. You continue this cycle, and money creates the ability to do that, by the way.
And it does. And I've always said as well, like, you can see that, and I know a few of these people, they've got all the money in the world, but they're so unhappy.
Yes.
And the thing is, we've not got all the money in the world and we're happy.
Yeah.
So when we do manage to be able to be comfortable, we've got money and we've got happiness.
You've done it the right way round.
We've done it the other way. And that's
finally.
That's the kind of life that I want to have, and I want to be able to, my kids to be comfortable, and us to be able to not wake up every morning worrying about what we're going to do with this or what we're going to do with that, because it's just life. Everybody in the country right now is worrying with that.
Yeah, so true.
And we're just still plodding along and doing
it's going
what we
to change
do.
that you not necessarily through the charity and not necessarily through the kids themselves, but there will be a way that you will make a significant amount of money that will actually add to the generational growth of your own children. And then not only will you be doing the work that you're doing already, but you'll actually be able to change, I think, DNA molecules. In other words, we talk about generational trauma earlier, and the sort of genetic response that has in the DNA and the bodies, and how we hand down traumas. And they did loads of studies on this, where people have had heightened anxiety or stress because their grandparents had heightened it gets handed down. When you start to change the patterns, not only of the behavior, but then you're able to provide opportunities for your own children, for other people's children, changing cycles, changing narratives. You do need to understand that money does buy that ability. It's very difficult to make a widespread change without financial income, but then you change the stories for future generations, for your own DNA too. And I think people are embarrassed to talk about money because it's always, especially in British culture, being seen as, but you can do that, and I think you should be comfortable looking at that as an option of
definitely
doing that, because you've done the hard graft now, and and you'll continue to do that, I know. So I know that by the end of this, everybody's going to be either exhausted because the emotional roller coaster has happened, but they're also going to be inspired and motivated and grateful that they came across you both, because I know I am. And like I said, I fell in love straight away within about 20 seconds of this voice note. So I know the impact that you're going to have on people.
Yeah.
And thank you both for being brave. I know you've spoken about things before, but it still takes a lot of bravery to talk about this stuff. It's not easy. And I know it was emotional at times for both of you, for being brave, for being honest, for being open, and for doing the work that you do, because I think it's such an important thing that you're doing. And I'm really, really appreciative of it.
Oh,
We
thank
appreciate
you.
coming on.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.
And thanks for coming all the way from, Hastings, wasn't it?
Yeah, East Sussex, yeah.
These people are warriors.
Warriors.
Coming through the traffic. Thank you. And I can't wait for dinner.
I know, me
Oh,
too.
same.